Chapter 2083. Now there were only 200 or 300 people left in this place. After a long fight, everyone was in a mess, and almost everyone was injured. At this moment, seeing Ning Xuema, these people looked at her with a complicated look. They were surprised that they finally had a strong new force on their side. After all, Miao Fan had always used little Xuema's face to do these kinds of things that angered the heavens and caused the 6 realms to be destroyed by the calamity. Now seeing her face again, everyone had a very strange feeling in their hearts, not knowing whether to be happy or angry. The evil beast was free, the human sovereign was crazy, and there were 2 evil beasts controlled by the flute next to it. Of course, in such a big environment, people couldn't have 2 complicated emotions. Ning Xuema didn't care about people's emotions. She didn't come here at the fastest speed to take care of people's emotions. She didn't even have time to see who she had just saved, and she quickly went into the fight. Because the evil beast that had just escaped was already charging towards her. Raging fire, stone sword, lightning. The evil beast seemed to have seen its nemesis. In a short time, it had used all its skills to attack Ning Xuema fiercely. A blood-red long sword appeared in Ning Xuema's palm. While fighting with the evil beast, she led it to the formation. She was a newcomer, so no one explained the rules of the seal to her. But after all, she had sealed Zisha once before, so she knew the way of the seal. She could make the most correct choice without others' guidance. Her figure flashed like lightning, and every move she made was extremely powerful. Her sword light was scattered like rain, and it didn't leave the evil beast's side. It actually forced the evil beast to be somewhat flustered, and unknowingly, it was lured to the seal again. Ning Xuema's figure flashed continuously, and knocked away a guardian of the mortal realm, who was stunned. She stepped on a protrusion of the spell pattern on the ground and shouted, "Start the formation!" The other people who were guarding the formation woke up from a dream, and immediately cooperated with each other. After a flash of 7-colored light in the center of the formation, the evil beast was directly covered. This formation had different effects when activated by different people. The higher the magic power of the person who activated it, the stronger the effect of the formation. This time, the formation was activated by Ning Xuema, so its power was not ordinary. The evil beast rushed left and right in the 7-colored light cover, but it couldn't shake the light cover at all. Everyone had trapped the evil beast so many times, but this time was the easiest and neatest, and the cost was the least. Countless bright gazes fell on Ning Xuema. Some were astonished, while others were filled with admiration. Those who had fought with the little devil master were surprised to find that her power, and it was terrifyingly, even her aura had changed. The once hot-tempered little devil master was now as calm as a deity. She was on par with Shunjuli. In the sealing battle against the evil beasts just now, Shunjuli had no time to participate in the battle, because he had to use the flute to trap other evil beasts. He relied on the human wave tactic of the masters of the 6 realms, so the casualties were great. Now the little devil master's power was comparable to that of a divine lord. What was more rare was that she was good at setting up the formation. Her arrival undoubtedly gave everyone a boost. At the moment when the evil beast was trapped, almost everyone cheered. "Devil Master! Devil Master!" Chapter 2084. Ning Xuema also let out a sigh of relief. Luckily, she was not too late. She was not too late. Her gaze turned and finally landed on Shunjuli. Her heart slightly tightened. Shunjuli did not even look at her. He just stood there indifferently. Her arrival did not seem to have any effect on him. His eyes were lowered, and the green bamboo flute flowed out a string of notes from his lips, suppressing the last 2 evil beasts. Ning Xuema thought that he would fly into a rage the moment he saw her. She did not expect him to have this kind of attitude. It was as if whatever she did had nothing to do with him, and he only treated her as a stranger. Ning Xuema did not know if she was relieved or not. No matter what, he did not give her any attitude on the spot. That should be considered magnanimous of him, right? His face did not even reveal too much disappointment. Perhaps in the depths of his heart, he also hoped that she would come and lend him a hand. It should be like this, right? This was not the time to think about personal feelings. It was more important to do proper business first. Ning Xuema put away all her emotions. Her gaze turned and landed on the crazy Ren Huang. Ren Huang had already been controlled by Shen Juli's white light barrier. He was currently punching and kicking in an attempt to escape. Ren Huang's wife was tightly holding on to the edge of the barrier. She kept calling out for her husband. Her voice was mournful and shocking. This scene was actually very shocking. But these days, people had been struck by too many tragedies of life and death. Most of them were already numb to it. They could only look at this pair of unfortunate couple with pity. Ning Xuema suddenly opened her eyes wide. Her heart felt like it had been struck by a heavy hammer. These two people, Ji Yinhuang, Tian Xueqing. Ren Huang had Ji Yinhuang's appearance while Ren Huang's wife had Tian Xueqing's appearance. Although their clothes were different and their appearances were not exactly the same, Ning Xuema could still recognize them at a glance. Her first reaction was that these two people had also reincarnated. Her second reaction was that she remembered that this was 50,000 years ago. In other words, the Ren Huang and Empress in front of her should be one of Ji Yinhuang and Tian Xueqing's previous lives. It turned out that they were once husband and wife. Ning Xuema felt particularly close to meeting acquaintances in this world. But when she saw them like this, she felt a stab of pain in her heart. Once the purple evil spirit was deeply infected, there was no hope of saving the person. They could only be executed. Therefore, the human emperor would definitely die this time. Shen Juli's bounded domain itself was a death domain, which would trap the people inside to death. Looking at the current situation of the human emperor, he should be dead in less than 3 minutes. The saddest thing in the world is the separation of life and death. Even little Xuema had heard that the human emperor and his wife loved each other so much. When she pursued Shen Juli, she even used the two of them as role models. Ning Xuema had little Xuema's memories, so she naturally remembered this part. The love between the human sovereign and his wife had spread throughout the 6 realms. But little Xuema had never seen them in person. Now that he finally saw him, he didn't expect him to be an old acquaintance. Thinking of Ji Yinhuang's tragic experience in his previous life, and looking at their current life, Ning Xuema slowly clenched her fists. Their tragedies in both lives seemed to be related to her. Ren Huang's wife suddenly knelt down in front of Shen Jiuli. "Divine Lord, please let him go first. I have a way to control him." Releasing the crazy human emperor at this time was undoubtedly asking for trouble. Everyone naturally disagreed and tried to dissuade her. Chapter 2085. Ning Xuema thought of something and looked at Shen Jiuli. Shen Jiuli had always been cold. He only cared about right and wrong, and did not care about human feelings. Based on his original character, he would definitely not agree to let the human emperor out. Ning Xuema stepped forward, and was about to plead for the human emperor's wife. Subconsciously, she still believed in Tian Xueqing's previous life. Unexpectedly, before she could say anything, Shen Juli moved his fingertips, and the wizardry barrier that imprisoned the human emperor disappeared. The human emperor regained his freedom. His handsome face was distorted, and he rushed out with a howl. A faint green light flashed, and a person directly rushed into his arms. "Your Majesty, I am Qingqing." The person who rushed into the human emperor's arms was his wife. Her name in this life was Yuan Qingqing. The human emperor was a person who would tear anything he saw. His palm had already pierced into Yuan Qingqing's shoulder blade. When he heard her words, his body slightly stiffened and stopped. Yuan Qingqing's blood flowed down his palm, and the human emperor froze there, as if he was scalded. His eyes, which had been shining with a dim light, turned, as if he was staring at Yuan Qingqing. Yuan Qingqing did not care about her injured shoulder at all. She risked being torn apart at any time, and desperately stretched out her arms to hold his waist. "Your Majesty, you said that you would protect me for a lifetime. You said that such a silly girl like me would be easily bullied outside. You said that we would live and die together. So you forced me, who was not very talented, to cultivate immortality with you. You also used the psyche power that you cultivated with great difficulty to change my muscles and blood. Actually, you should have cultivated immortality long ago. But in order to wait for me, you delayed your ascension. You said that you would wait for me to catch up, and then we would ascend together. No matter what, we would be a pair of immortal lovers. Her voice sounded like she was crying and laughing at the same time. Tears flowed down her cheeks. This time, you've also always protected me, risking everything to protect me. Your Majesty, we agreed that no matter who is poisoned by the purple demon poison, only the other party can free themselves, while the other party has to live well. She hugged him and talked endlessly. The light in Ren Huang's eyes flickered several times. His fingers stretched and stretched on the back of the person in his arms, ready to claw down at any time. The guards of the mortal world wanted to rush over and take Yuan Qingqing back, but they couldn't get close to the human emperor. Once someone got close, the human emperor would be in danger of exploding. They could only stand by and watch this scene nervously. Yuan Qingqing suddenly took out a tri-edged saber covered with talismans. That saber was extremely long, a full 3 feet. She flipped her wrist, and the tri-edged blade pierced into the empress's heart. It came out from his chest and pierced into her body. Your Majesty, I've broken my promise. I'm afraid of being left alone. I know you don't want me to leave. Let's go together. The two of them were pierced through the sword like candied haws on a stick, hugging each other like conjoined twins. Apparently, the talismans on the tri-edged saber had an exorcising effect. At the last moment, the human emperor finally held her tightly with his trembling hands, as if he was holding the most precious treasure of his life. All right, let's go together. The two of them slowly fell down and closed their eyes together. They held each other until death, and no one could separate them anymore. People showed pity in their eyes, but at the same time, they looked at Miao Fan with even more hatred. In this disaster, which one of them hadn't lost a family member? Chapter 2086. They had seen their wives, children, parents, relatives, either infected by the purple evil spirit or killed by the infected. They watched them fall in front of them, but they couldn't do anything about it. Almost everyone had a debt of blood and tears to settle. But Shen Juli had told them in advance that no matter what happened, they must keep their minds balanced and calm. Once their minds were shaken, they would be easily controlled by the purple evil spirit. The team had started to move forward again. No matter how tragic things happened here, no one could shed tears. Everyone had only one goal in mind: to seal the purple evil spirit, to give the 6 realms a future. Shen Juli must have used some kind of magic on his palm. The blood kept flowing, and he used it to attract the last 2 evil beasts to follow him. The moment Ning Xuema arrived, she discovered that the evil purple beast was extremely excited to see her. It looked as if it wanted to eat her alive. She looked at Miao Fan, who had returned to her original body, and she understood most of it. This time, it was Miao Fan who did it, but because she was wearing little Xuema's face and breath, she was remembered by the 8 evil beasts. So they only wanted to tear little Xuema apart. But they didn't care about Miao Fan, the initiator of the evil. They were really stupid evil beasts of the purple evil spirit. Shen Juli had led the 2 evil beasts away. Ning Xuemo caught up with them. Before she could say anything, the 2 evil beasts immediately widened their small eyes when they saw her. They struggled to get rid of Shen Juli's flute and rushed to Ning Xuema. These 2 evil beasts were the most ferocious. Even if one of them went crazy, it could destroy the world. Let alone 2 of them going crazy together? These 2 evil beasts were quite smart. They knew how to cooperate with each other. One from the front and one from the back. They concentrated their attacks on Ning Xuema without leaving any blind spots. Like a squall, in a split second, they attacked Ning Xuema to the point that she almost couldn't breathe. This kind of evil beast could only be sealed and could not be killed. Any magic weapon that attacked its body would not cause any damage at all. At most, one could use powerful telekinesis to push it back a few steps, but it would quickly counterattack. The Sky Splitter sword in Ning Xuema's hand was a vicious sword. This sword was originally in Luo Jiuchen's hands. After Luo Jiuchen was sealed, this sword fell into the clouds and was picked up by Shen Juli, who brought it back to Fantian Palace and sealed it with a barrier. When Ning Xuema was rushing out of Fantian Palace, she didn't expect that the sword would also break free and follow her. Ning Xuema, didn't have a good impression of this sword made of ferocious bones. Originally, she didn't want to pay attention to it, but she didn't expect it to keep following her, trying to find a way to get into her hand. When she encountered opponents who had been infected by the purple evil spirit and lost their minds, this sword would automatically rush forward to kill them. It was very obedient. After a few times, Ning Xuema couldn't bear it. What's more, this sword was very powerful. It was a supreme magic weapon to deal with infected people, so she kept this sword. Now this sword had come in handy. The two evil beasts were not afraid of anything, but they seemed to be a little afraid of her sword. When she tried her best to slash them with the sword, she could leave a scar and let them bleed a little. The two beasts attacked Ning Xuema too quickly. When everyone reacted, Ning Xuema had already fought with the two beasts for more than 10 rounds. In just an instant, one person and two beasts were fighting fiercely in this space. Everyone could be said to be the masters of masters, but when they saw this fight, they found that their eyes were not enough. Chapter 2087. The speed of both sides was too fast, and they couldn't even see the movements of the two sides clearly, let alone intervene. Seeing that Ning Xuema was in danger again and again under the attacks of the two beasts, everyone became anxious and looked at Shenjuli. Shenjuli stood there, his face was unusually pale. Looking at Ning Xuema and the two beasts fighting, he didn't have any intention to intervene. Ning Xuema was in danger again and again, but there was no expression on his face. He was very calm. The bamboo flute in his hand was still playing. Not a single note was wrong. Everyone knew that the sound of the bamboo flute was used to control the 8 beasts. Only by playing the flute, the 6 beasts that were already trapped would not break the seal. Blood was still dripping from his palm. God's blood was once the most delicious food for the 8 beasts, but after they saw their enemy, even the delicious food could no longer attract them. They attacked Ning Xuema crazily. They simply didn't care about the cost. Ning Xuema just rushed forward to replace Miao Fan and use her own blood to attract the 2 beasts forward, and then let Shenjuli bandage the wound on his palm. But she didn't expect that the 2 beasts hated her so much. When they saw her, they rushed forward as if they saw their best friend. She tried several times to get rid of them and tried to run forward, but she couldn't jump out of the encirclement of the 2 beasts. Ning Xuema encountered the 8 beasts when the purple evil happened before her time travel. She felt that the 8 beasts were not so powerful. At that time, it was not as difficult for her to fight against 8 beasts as it was now. Now she was almost out of breath from the attacks. Fortunately, whether it was combat experience or martial arts, she was a lot stronger than before. Although she couldn't do anything to the 2 beasts, the 2 beasts couldn't hurt her for a while, forming a kind of dilemma. She naturally glanced at Shenjuli in the midst of her busy work, and found that he was standing there, looking at her indifferently. That gaze was like looking at a stranger. She was so busy, but he didn't have the intention to help. Although she knew that he would be very angry when she broke his barrier and ran here, she didn't expect him to be so cold. His heart twitched, and a sour feeling rushed to his nose. While she was distracted, an evil beast sprayed a bunch of iron needles at her face. She couldn't dodge in time. She pursed her lips and made up her mind. If she threw caution to the wind and got hit by its needles, she might be able to tear a hole in this beast and break out of its encirclement. With a sway of her body, she ignored the pitch-black iron needles and charged toward the beast. In the blink of an eye, the needles were right in front of her eyes, and the sky-splitter sword in her hand sliced across the beast's fangs. If both sides hit the ground, Ning Xuema's left arm would be shot into a hornet's nest, and the evil beast would be sent flying by her, making way for her. A white light suddenly flashed in the air. The iron needles were stirred up by the white light and shattered into pieces. That evil beast was also sent flying a zhang away by Ning Xuema, and she took the opportunity to rush out of the encirclement of the 2 beasts. In the midst of the 2 beasts' angry roars, Ning Xuema's movements were like lightning, and she directly rushed forward. "I'll lead them to the next seal point." Everyone only saw a red shadow flash by, and the 2 beasts behind her chased after her like crazy. They didn't listen to Shenjuli's instructions at all. Everyone was stunned, and after being stunned for a while, they naturally followed. When Shenjuli saved her just now, he was about to do something, but he didn't expect her to be so radical. In the blink of an eye, she led the two beasts away and disappeared. Chapter 2088. Shenjuli paused for a while, then suddenly thought of something. His face changed, and his figure flashed as he chased after her. The sky was filled with purple fog, and there were all kinds of evil spirits howling in the fog. The fog was too thick, and her speed was too fast. When Ning Xuemo ran forward alone, she couldn't see the road in front of her clearly. Fortunately, she was familiar with the road here. It was almost the same as the sealing array 50,000 years later. Even if she closed her eyes, she would still know which direction to take. She ran as fast as lightning in front, and along the way, she would occasionally kill the evil spirits that came out from the thick fog. The two beasts chased after her crazily, and they almost threw off the crowd that had been following behind them. Everyone was surprised. Although this evil spirit sealing array was designed by Shenjuli, it also increased the wisdom of many trap experts from other worlds. It could be said that this array was set up for the first time, and the mechanism inside didn't conform to any trap technique. Even those who set up the array didn't dare to run recklessly inside, in case they hit sharp rocks or fell into deep trenches with traps. This little devil master obviously came here for the first time. But why did she seem to be more familiar with the array than them? Everyone had the same question in their minds, but no one could give them an answer. Shenjuli also seemed to realize something, and his face became paler and paler. Ning Xuemo finally ran to the narrow cliff that was only half a foot wide. The cliff was still there, and it was very slippery and bright red, just like when Ning Xuemo first saw it. The two beasts behind her were about to catch up. Without thinking, Ning Xuemo ran up the cliff and fiercely ran forward. Just as she ran a few steps, an eagle's cry came from above her head, and 7 or 8 of those soul-eating eagles rushed down at her. What the hell? Weren't these eagles supposed to appear 50,000 years later? Why did they appear now? When she, Shenjuli, and the others passed through this mountain ridge, she had suffered from these eagles. With her current ability, it wasn't a problem for her to fight against 3 or 4 of them. But now there were 7 or 8 of them. What's more, the two evil beasts behind her were rushing her like their lives depended on it. While she was delaying, the two beasts also rushed towards her, one in front and one behind. Her martial arts skills were high now, but even a tiger couldn't fight against a pack of wolves. If she had known earlier, she would have waited for the others. She scanned her surroundings again, and a look of disappointment appeared in her eyes. It was reasonable for others to be slower, but Shenjuli should be extremely fast, right? If he wanted to chase after them, he should have arrived by now. Is he punishing me for being disobedient? When he locked her up in Fantion Palace, he once whispered in her ear, "Xuema, if you try to leave, then you and I will cut off all ties." At that time, she had only taken his words as a threat, but now it seemed to be true. Did he really want to cut all ties with her? Why didn't he think about who she was doing this for? She was trying to save him. Even when she rushed up to talk to him, she only wanted him to stop using the god's blood. She didn't expect that he would just ignore her like this. Ning Xuemo felt even more wronged in her heart. She pursed her lips and threw caution to the wind. "Shenjuli, I don't need you to care about me. I will definitely support you to the end." She was ruthless in her heart, but she wasn't careless in her actions. She fought with the 7 or 8 netherworld eagles, and she also had to avoid the attacks of the two evil beasts from the front and back. It was very tiring. Chapter 2089. Wasn't this considered as a standard beast fighting? There were birds and beasts, and all of them were not easy to deal with. Ning Xuemo felt that she was very humorous. In this kind of life and death situation, she was actually able to think of the word beast. The mountain ridge was narrow. She moved and jumped on it, weaving in and out of these few beasts. She was as slippery as a fish. She couldn't do anything to those two beasts, but she was still able to deal with these few nether eagles. In just over 10 minutes, 4 of the 7 to 8 nether eagles had already been killed by her. Moreover, There was an advantage to fighting in such a chaotic manner. Because the place where they were fighting was narrow, and there were many of them, they would often restrain each other as they fought. As long as Ning Xuema made good use of them, she could often use the nether eagles as her shield. For example, the two beasts originally wanted to scratch her face with their claws, and the nether eagle above her head wanted to scratch the back of her head. She turned her body and dodged at the critical moment. Hence, the beast scratched the nether eagle's body with its claws, and the nether eagle slapped the beast's head with its claws. The nether eagle was torn into two, and the beast was also slapped down the mountain ridge by the nether eagle's claws. This beast was strange. It obviously didn't have wings, but after it fell down the mountain ridge, it would fly up in a blink of an eye, and continue to attack Ning Xuema fiercely. Ning Xuema naturally glanced at the people who were following behind her in between the fight. There were already dozens of experts following behind her, but she couldn't see Shenjuli. She could only hear the sound of the flute. Ning Xuema knew that once Shenjuli blew this flute, the entire array would be able to hear it, and no matter where one was listening, the volume of the sound would be the same. So she was unable to determine where he was based on the sound of the flute. She had already encountered several dangerous situations, but she didn't see him appear. Presumably, he had made up his mind not to take action. She curled her lips and smiled. Was this considered as lifting a stone and smashing it on her own feet? She obviously felt sorry for him, and wanted to block the disaster for him. Now it had become her facing these beasts alone, and he had become a bystander. Could it be that he didn't want to fight side by side with her? The two of them could cooperate properly for once. There were some things that she couldn't think about. The moment she thought about it, her heart would feel suffocated. Ever since she broke the enchantment of Shenjuli's Fantian Palace, her kung fu had increased exponentially. It was as if a force had been injected into her body, allowing her to complete her mission. And now, she was fulfilling her mission. She only wanted to do her best to make up for her mistakes and minimize her losses. Other than that, she could only temporarily not think about it. She didn't know if it was because her martial arts had improved too quickly, or if those nether eagles had become weak. But in less than 10 minutes, those 7 to 8 nether eagles had all been dealt with by her. Those two evil beasts had also been kicked down the ridge twice. As for the others behind him, there were a few who rushed up the mountain to help. However, the opponent was too strong, and the place was too narrow. Not only were they unable to help, but they also made Ning Xuema feel that her hands and feet were tied. She was unable to display her full strength. Those who could hold on until here weren't weak. These people weren't the opponents of the evil beasts, but they were still relatively good at dealing with the nether eagles that kept appearing in front of them. A few of them took advantage of the time when Ning Xuema was fighting with the two evil beasts, and rushed to the front to help Ning Xuema clean up the nether eagles. Since the obstacles in front of them were cleared, Ning Xuema only needed to deal with the two evil beasts, and it was much easier. As long as she seized the opportunity, she would jump out of the encirclement of the two beasts and run forward. Chapter 2090. As long as she seized the opportunity, she would jump out of the encirclement of the two beasts and run forward. The way she jumped out of the encirclement could be said to be full of tricks, making the two beasts unable to guard against her. This made them even angrier as they chased after her. The road ahead was very smooth, and not a single nether eagle jumped out along the way. Ning Xuema was still a little puzzled in her heart. With the martial arts of the people running in front, it shouldn't be difficult to fight with the nether eagles. They wouldn't encounter any danger, but it should still take time, right? Could it be that their martial arts were already so good? Could they get rid of the nether eagles in a single move? Or was there another hidden expert clearing the obstacles in front? Then who was this hidden expert? Ning Xuema didn't even need to think to guess. Ning Xuema's lips revealed a smile. She knew that he was actually still concerned about her. He was just angry because she didn't listen to him. Thinking of this, her spirit suddenly rose as she ran forward like a gust of wind. Her figure was like the wind. When she was about to run to the end, she finally saw Shenjuli again. He was indeed in front of her, and he was really with those people clearing the obstacles. He still held the flute in his left hand, and the sword in his right hand scattered like fireworks. With one sword, he cut the nether eagle that was attacking a young girl into two halves. The young girl's martial arts were slightly weaker, so she dodged a little slower. She saw the blood of the nether eagle splattering in the air and pouring down towards her head. The blood of the nether eagle was poisonous. Highly poisonous. Once the blood poured down, the young girl's face would be disfigured. Fortunately, Shenjuli acted quickly. The sword light spun in front of the young girl, blocking the blood of the nether eagle. Not a single drop fell on the young girl's body. The young girl was still in shock. Looking at the great god standing in front of her, she blushed and said, "Thank you, Divine Lord." Shenjuli nodded slightly. He didn't say anything and continued to help the others. His attacks were sharp and accurate. Almost every time he attacked, he would not miss. A sword flew out and killed a nether eagle. Because of his help, the obstacles in front of them were cleared very quickly. Ning Xuema also had fewer obstacles when she ran. Once she ran faster, the two beasts behind her wouldn't be able to catch up so easily, and the number of times she would be attacked by them would also decrease. Ning Xuema couldn't help but glance at Shenjuli, who was floating in front of her. In fact, the two of them were working together, right? In this way, the overall speed of their advancement was imperceptibly increased by a lot. Ning Xuema was, after all, clearing obstacles. Her speed slowed down a little, and soon she was not far behind Shenjuli. Another hawk had appeared out of nowhere and was heading straight for her. This dark eagle was not large in size and had always been hidden in the depths of the fog. When Shenjuli and the others passed through, it did not come out to attack. But now, he sprang out like he was having a stroke and caught Ning Xuema off guard. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and immediately slashed at the nether hawk with her sword, directly cutting off one of the nether hawk's claws. The nether hawk screeched. It was actually not afraid of death, and still pounced at Ning Xuema. At this time, the two beasts had also arrived. Ning Xuema stabbed the nether hawk's abdomen with her sword. At the same time, she flew up and kicked one of the beasts half a step back. She turned her body and avoided the steel knife that the other beast spat out. These few exchanges were like lightning. Ning Xuema almost rolled on the line between life and death. Only then did she rely on her nimble skills to turn danger into safety. She couldn't help but glance at Shenjuli again. Chapter 2091. She glanced at Shenjuli. She was fighting for her life behind him, but he didn't even turn back to look at her. Instead, he helped the Celestial Emperor's daughter to settle the Dark Eagle. "Thank you, Supreme Divinity. Thank you, Supreme Divinity." Voices of gratitude rose and fell in front of her. There were both men and women. It was the most heartfelt gratitude when he helped them settle the Dark Eagle. Ning Xuema felt that she also wanted to have a chance to thank him. Ning Xuema was distracted for a moment and was surrounded by two beasts again. These two beasts were still smart. Every time they intercepted Ning Xuema on the mountain ridge, they would attack her from the front and back at the same time. The mountain ridge was narrow. Ning Xuema needed to kick the beast blocking her way down for a few seconds every time she tried to escape. However, these two beasts were not easy to kick. She had to use a lot of strength every time. She fought with two beasts on the mountain ridge again. The people in front gradually went further away. Only a few whispers of discussion occasionally drifted into Ning Xuema's ears. The Devil Master is surrounded by those two beasts again. Should we go and help her? We are no match for them. We will only lose our lives for nothing. She must be saved by someone with similar skills. Supreme Divinity. The Devil Master seems to be having a hard time fighting two beasts alone. Why don't? Someone carefully suggested. Most people felt pressured when talking to the Supreme Divinity. This person didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was obvious. He hoped that the Supreme Divinity could go and help the Devil Master. When these words drifted closer to Ning Xuema, she couldn't help but perk up her ears. No need. She is the Devil Master. She can handle it herself. Shenjuli's answer was always so concise. The people in front of her went far away, and no one turned back to help her. She could only rely on herself. Ning Xuema pursed her lips slightly. She smiled. He wasn't just a little confident in himself. Shouldn't he be happier? Also, his attack just now was very clean and efficient. There was no more blood on his palm, and even his complexion looked better than before. His body should be fine now. Just now when she was fighting, he had been watching from the side. Ning Xuema was a little disappointed, but she was more worried. She was afraid that he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. She was afraid that he had the will but lacked the strength. She was even more afraid that he had exhausted all his divine power, and was just standing there forcefully. Therefore, along the way, she kept looking back. Although she hoped that he would appear to help her, she was also afraid that he was injured or blocked by something behind her. This person had always been stubborn, and liked to swallow his words. He didn't like to talk. Now that she saw him like this, she could be at ease. However, in his heart, what's with this sore and swollen feeling? What was going on with her eyes? She pursed her lips tightly, telling herself not to think so much. Focusing on dealing with this purple demon beast was the most important thing. Everything else could wait until later. No matter what, she had finally helped him. No matter what, she had finally put in her own effort for this purple demon disaster. She tried her best to control her scattered thoughts and fought with the two evil beasts. She would be free soon. And the next seal was not far from the other side of the mountain ridge. As long as one more beast was sealed, the last beast would be much easier to deal with. She had to hold on. After fighting for so long, her arms were sore and her legs were numb, but it was not a big problem. She could hold on until the seal was over. Chapter 2092. She saw an opportunity and slapped one of the beasts that was blocking her way. The bright red light showed that her slap was definitely a thunderous attack. That evil beast was hit by her bright red light and tumbled down the mountain ridge with a somersault. Ning Xuema smiled and slashed the other beast that was pouncing on her from behind. She then flew forward. Woo! Suddenly, there was a long and shrill cry from below the mountain. A green light suddenly shot out from the mountain. The light came without any warning and was extremely fast. Ning Xuema was just above the light. When she realized it, it was too late to retreat. Poof! Blood splattered everywhere. Her thigh was directly penetrated by the light. She was almost nailed to the mountain. Blood instantly soaked her trousers. She was in great pain. She groaned and swayed on the mountain before falling down. The sweet smell of blood made the two beasts even crazier. The two beasts that had just climbed up the mountain kicked their hooves and immediately flew down. They wanted to cut her into 18 pieces. They wanted to take revenge. At the seventh seal, the people who had arrived in advance had already taken their positions. They were waiting for Ning Xuema to lure the two beasts over. Then, they would lure one of the beasts into the eye of the array and trap it. Everything was ready, except for the east wind. Shenjuli did not gather with them. He stood on a lonely big rock and never stopped playing his bamboo flute. The wind lifted his robe, making it flutter. Divine Lord, do you want to take a break? A woman walked over and stood under the big rock. Just now, Shenjuli had saved this woman's life. This made her feel grateful. She also felt that she was one step closer to the Divine Lord. Previously, she had always looked up to the Divine Lord. Now, she finally gathered her courage and walked over. Shenjuli still looked down and played the flute, ignoring her. Before the 8 beasts were completely sealed, he could not stop using the flute to control them. He also did not want to waste his energy to reply to this boring question. Take a break. If he rested for a while, the 6 beasts would break out of their seals and rebel. Miao Fan was still hovering in the enchantment barrier beside Shenjuli. It seemed that Shenjuli had cast some kind of spell on her, as she had been sleeping with her eyes closed, and no more blood was dripping from her body. Her blood was no longer useful, so Shenjuli no longer cared about her. It's all because of this woman that the 6 realms suffered such a calamity. The woman clenched her fists in anger. She glared at Miao Fan, wishing she could drag her out and cut her into 1,000 pieces. Shenjuli remained silent. He was not a talkative person. Ning Xuema's actions just now had indeed helped him a lot. He was finally able to catch his breath and recuperate. When Ning Xuema was fighting with the evil beasts, he could indeed help her and fight side by side with her. However, The moment he saw her, he felt a knot in his heart. He tried so hard to persuade her to stay, and even tried every means to make her stay, but he still could not stop her. She broke through all the barriers he had set and still came. He once said that as long as she dared to come, he would cut off all ties with her. He really did not just say this sentence. He would carry it out to the end. He would only treat her as a companion who sealed Zisha, no different from the people around him. Since she could be so cruel to leave him now, why couldn't he let her go first? Since she wanted to do her part to seal Zisha, then he would give her this opportunity to do it. There were roars of evil beasts coming from the mountain ridge. Obviously, the battle there was fierce. The woman who came to strike up a conversation was a little embarrassed. Another man next to her came forward. Chapter 2093. The woman who came to strike up a conversation was embarrassed. Another man came up and bowed. Supreme Divinity, should we go and help the Devil Lord? Shinjuli didn't say anything, as if he didn't hear anything. The man paused. I'll go and help her. He turned and strode away. Ningxiuema was still a young girl of 12 or 13 years old. They were all men waiting here, but they had to let a young girl fight for her life. He couldn't bear it. The man was an immortal. Since he could come here, his kung fu was naturally top-notch. He hated evil. When he walked in the 6 realms, every time he encountered injustice, he couldn't help but intervene. He was never afraid of anyone. Even in front of the Divine Lord, he only had respect, not fear. He wouldn't act according to the Divine Lord's mood. The relationship between the Devil Master and the Divine Lord was a little subtle. In fact, these people could see it, but it wasn't convenient for them to ask. Ningxiuema was fighting alone at the back. In fact, many people felt uncomfortable and wanted to help her. But because of Shenjuli's face, most people didn't dare to ask. But this man didn't. After enduring for a while, he couldn't stand it anymore. He informed Shinjuli and strode away. Shinjuli didn't have any reaction. Since he already treated her as an ordinary companion, he wouldn't ask about her. He would teach her a real lesson. He would let her know that he didn't have to have her. A moment later, the evil beast suddenly roared in the distance. Shinjuli's fingers holding the flute tightened. That evil beast was demonized. The power of a demonized evil beast could be increased by 4 or 5 times. Then that long howl was too ear-piercing. Almost everyone present felt their scalps go numb from the shock. As soon as the roar ended, they heard a loud shout. Devil Master! Then, there was no sound from that side. Everyone looked at each other and couldn't help but listen. There was silence on the mountain ridge, as if the battle had ended. Was it because the little Devil Master hurt the evil beast too much? Was that why it roared so tragically? Or, everyone looked at each other. Suddenly someone shouted, Where is the Divine Lord? Countless eyes looked at the place where the Divine Lord had been standing, but he was nowhere to be seen. There was an accident. Everyone ran towards the mountain ridge. The mountain ridge was still the same, but not a single person could be seen on it. There was no little demon master, whose martial arts were extraordinarily high, nor were there those 2 evil beasts. Instead, under the cliff to the left of the mountain ridge, the indistinct roars of evil beasts could be heard. Ningxiuema mournfully cursed in her heart. She seemed to have some enmity with this mountain ridge. She had suffered a great loss here twice in the past and suffered a setback here. Her body fell like a meteor, and she tried to circulate her energy several times to stop herself from falling, but to no avail. Her left thigh had been pierced through by a sharp blade, adding 2 wounds about half a foot wide. The sharp blade made by the evil beast not only left a huge wound, it was also poisonous, causing her leg to hurt, as if she was being stung by 100 scorpions. The sharp blade had grazed her bone, and a small part of her bone was broken. The pain of the broken bone was so excruciating that it scratched her heart and liver. The pain intertwined and made her weak all over. She couldn't use her psychokinesis to turn over and jump up. She knew that there was lava below the cliff, and she would definitely be melted if she fell in. So she desperately tried to save herself during the process of falling. Chapter 2094. She knew that there was lava at the bottom of the cliff, and she would be melted if she fell in. Therefore, she tried her best to save herself. She couldn't use her telekinesis at the moment, so she used her lightness skill. She threw the Sky Splitter sword in her hand towards the cliff. The Sky Splitter sword sank into the hilt, and she wrapped a piece of ribbon around the sword hilt. She finally stopped falling. She held a piece of ribbon in her hand and dangled it in the air like a swing. Not bad, it was better than the previous encounter. At least she stopped falling like a stock and stabilized. Before she could heave a sigh of relief, the top of her head darkened, and a gust of bloody wind assaulted her nose. She raised her head and saw the two ferocious beasts pouncing down from above. They had jagged fangs and bloodshot eyes. Each of them was the size of a small elephant. Their ferocious appearance was frightening. Ning Xuema cursed in her heart. Her Sky Splitter sword was stuck in the cliff. She held the ribbon in one hand, and her other hand was empty. What could she use to fight with the two ferocious beasts? At that moment, hundreds of thoughts flashed in her mind. She did not even care about the pain in her leg. The two beasts probably saw her predicament and wanted to tear her apart. Therefore, they did not use any spells to attack her. Instead, they opened their bloody mouths. One of them rushed toward her head while the other rushed toward her leg. They seemed to want to divide and devour Ning Xuema. Seeing that their bloody mouths were about to reach her, Ning Xuema suddenly slapped the cliff with her palm. Her body flew out diagonally and brushed past the fangs of the two beasts. The two beasts could not stop in time. They did not manage to get the delicious flesh and blood. Instead, they collided with each other. Bang! An earth-shattering sound was heard. The two beasts' heads collided with each other. They trembled and fell down. This move of Ning Xuema's seemed very risky, but she was confident that she would succeed. Judging the direction the strength used, the angle of her body flying, all of them were the pinnacle of experience. It was amazing. She avoided the fate of being dismembered. However, because she used too much strength, her palm was cut by the ribbon. It was burning with pain. However, she could not care less at this time. She had to take this opportunity to fly up. Otherwise, the two beasts would rush up. She didn't believe that the two ferocious beasts would die just like that. Devil Master! A voice came from above. Ning Xuemo raised her head and saw a young man flying towards her on a flying sword. The man was dressed in black and had a tall and straight figure. His temperament was calm and handsome, but he had a handsome baby face. When Ning Xuema saw the man's face clearly, she was stunned. Shiju. No, it wasn't Shijue. It was little Shirtu. Number 2, who had gone through thick and thin with her in the Tianxi continent, had died tragically in the mountains in order to save her. I didn't expect to bump into him here. Could he be little Shita's previous incarnation? She had always felt guilty and regretful towards number 2 in her heart. Now that she suddenly saw him here, she was stunned. The man extended a hand towards her. Devil Master, I'll carry you up. At this time, Ning Xuema naturally would not be polite with him. She immediately reached out and grabbed his hand. He used a little more strength, and she flew onto his sword. The injury on her leg was too serious. Her entire trouser leg was stained with blood. The artery on her leg was probably pierced. Blood was still gushing out, causing her vision to turn black. She almost could not stand on the man's sword. She lowered her head and wanted to treat the wound on her leg. However, her body swayed and she almost fell. Chapter 2095. The man was shocked and stretched out his arm to hold her waist. Be careful. Whoosh. The two beasts were really strong. They fell down and flipped in the air, then rushed up again and pounced on the two people on the sword. Be careful. The man no longer cared about the woman on the sword. He raised his palm and slapped at one of the beasts that was already in front of him. His psychokinesis could be considered profound, and his palm could even shatter a diamond. However, when his palm landed on the beast's body, it was as if nothing had happened. It only shook its head and suddenly swept past his sword, pouncing in a direction. The man was stunned and suddenly realized that Ning Xuema had disappeared from his sword. He was shocked and thought that she had been taken away by the evil beasts. He raised his head and looked in the direction that the beasts flew to. He saw that the supreme divinity had flown down. He was still holding the flute in his left hand, but his right arm was holding the pale little devil master. He was flying up quickly. The two beasts were chasing after them. The two people and the two beasts were covered in smoke and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The man breathed a sigh of relief. The supreme divinity had finally made a move, so the little devil master should be safe. He also chased after them from behind. Ning Xuema was held by Xinjiuli. Smelling the familiar scent on his body, she felt suffocated as if she was drowning. She couldn't tell if it was because she was wronged or something else. She was still thinking about her sword, so she raised her hand to summon it. The sword was already spiritual, so it could be considered a divine object. It came when she summoned it. Sure enough, the sword flew out from the cliff with a swoosh and flew towards her. Ning Xuema was happy and reached out to grab it. Before she could grab the hilt of the sword, a white light flashed and knocked the sword away. Ning Xuema was shocked. "You." The white light was sent by Xinjiuli. Xinjiuli said coldly, "That sword is not yours." Ning Xuema was speechless. She knew that the sword was not made by her in this life, but it was fate that brought her to this sword. Now, she urgently needed it to protect herself. The two beasts were catching up. It was about to bite their feet. Xinjiuli, on the other hand, was holding the flute in one hand and her in the other. For a moment, he could not split his hands to send the two evil beasts flying. He only flicked out two beams of white light to slightly slow down the two beasts. However, the power of the white light was obviously not as strong as the white light he emitted from his hand. It didn't even hurt the two beasts' fur. Instead, it made them even crazier. The blood dripping from Ning Xuema's legs stimulated their nerves even more. They bit tightly and attacked separately, not wanting to let Xinjiuli take her away. Xinjiuli frowned slightly and raised his hand. Ning Xuema's body suddenly flew up. In the blink of an eye, she had already landed in the enchantment floating beside him. Xinjiuli condensed a sword in his palm. In the blink of an eye, the two beasts were sent tumbling several times, falling down a dozen meters. Xinjiuli took the opportunity to fly up and landed on the other side of the stone beam. Miao Fan was also in the enchantment. She was lying there. When Ning Xuema fell in, she almost hit Miao Fan. Fortunately, she adjusted her body in time and sat on the side safely. Ning Xuema calmed down in the enchantment and quickly looked outside. He heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Xinjiuli had struck the two beasts down, and that number 2 had flown up as well. Only then did she care about the injury on her leg. The intense pain made her break out in cold sweat. She had lost too much blood. In the blink of an eye, there was a pool of blood where she was sitting. Her vision was also turning black. Chapter 2096. She smiled bitterly. It seemed that she was not invulnerable even though her skills had improved greatly. It would still hurt when she was injured, and she would faint if she lost too much blood. She took a deep breath and immediately treated the wound on her leg. First, she sealed her acupoints to stop the bleeding. Then, she took out a bottle of medicine from her storage space. This was the result of upgrading the medicine that she had refined in the medicine refining room for the past few days. It was not much different from the medicine that Xinjiuli had refined. She looked at her injured leg. Her pants were torn, and the 2 bloody holes were badly mangled. If she wanted to treat the wound, she would have to tear her pants. Unfortunately, the wound was on her upper thigh. If she tore her pants, she would be exposed. At this moment, Xinjiuli had already landed on the other side with her. There were other people watching from the other side, and countless pairs of eyes were staring at her inside the wizardry barrier. The Devil Master is injured. Aya, she's bleeding a lot. That wound is so horrible. I didn't expect that the Devil Master, who is so powerful, would be injured so badly. That evil beast is too powerful. She is a delicate little girl, and she has been fighting alone for so long. It is already amazing that she can hold on until now. There were different opinions, but they were all concerned about Ning Xuema. These people originally did not have a good impression of Ning Xuema, the little Devil Master. However, after interacting with her along the way, they saw her fighting alone with the evil beast in order to protect everyone and greatly reduce the casualties. It could be said that she had made a great contribution. At this moment, they were full of admiration and gratitude for her. In addition, she was born petite, with big eyes, a small mouth and small dimples on her cheeks. This kind of small appearance could easily arouse people's desire to protect her. Naturally, they could not bear to see her injured. Devil Master, I have medicine here. It is specially used to treat sword wounds. It is definitely a miracle medicine. A person flew towards the wizardry barrier and handed over his most precious bottle of medicine. However, although the wizardry barrier looked transparent, it was very effective in blocking. If Shunjili did not help, nothing could be sent into the wizardry barrier. Therefore, the bottle of Institute of Pharmacology naturally fell to the ground and broke into pieces. The man's face was full of pain. Fortunately, the little devil master inside the enchantment barrier was still very kind to him. She was in so much pain that her little face was pale, but she still smiled at him, revealing her signature dimples. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have my own medicine. She shook the medicine bottle in her hand and waved her blood-stained little hand at the crowd to reassure them. Everyone saw that although she was seriously injured, she was full of energy and seemed to be in good spirits. They finally heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, the two beasts finally rushed up again. Shunjili took a step forward and rushed forward. When the crowd saw the two ferocious beasts, they also scattered like birds and beasts, running towards the seventh sealed area. It was not easy to seal the seventh beast. Firstly, this beast was demonized and wanted to go berserk at all times. Secondly, the little devil master, who was the main force of the beast fighting, was now trapped in the Divine Venerable's enchantment. He couldn't help for the time being. As for the Divine Venerable, he still had to control the other beast to prevent it from running over and causing trouble. So he couldn't help them. Therefore, they had to risk their lives for this sealing operation. Fortunately, Ning Xuema was inside the enchantment barrier. Although she couldn't help by herself, she was still very smart and opinionated. She put down the wound on her leg and stared at the sealed area with her big eyes. From time to time, she would remind them to pay attention to where they should pay attention and which direction was the easiest. Chapter 2097. Everyone was also a clever person, so they understood with just a hint. Following Ning Xuema's advice, it was much easier to move in this direction. The cost of sealing the second last evil beast was not too high. Ning Xuema was giving orders when her vision suddenly turned white. The originally transparent wizardry barrier turned milky white, and she could no longer see anything outside. Ning Xuema was speechless. What did Shunjili mean? Before she could figure it out, a light green medicine bottle rolled in and landed beside her hand. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. This medicine bottle belonged to Shunjili. The medicine inside was also the best medicine that he had developed. It was the kind that could heal injuries immediately after applying a little. Compared to his medicine, her own medicine was like a knockoff. Shunjili also said, "Heal yourself." His words were concise and comprehensive. This was the Almighty's usual style. His voice was not cold this time. It even had a hint of concern. Ning Xuema picked up the medicine bottle and smiled. "Thank you, Divine Lord." Her voice was gentle and polite, but there was also a hint of alienation. Shunjuli's body stiffened slightly, and he said coldly, "You're welcome. I saved you because I didn't want my companions to get hurt. You're very useful here." He had been playing the flute all this time, and he basically spoke in Fu language. His skills were high, so there was no difference when he spoke in Fu language. Ning Xuema nodded. "I understand. Don't worry, Divine Lord. I won't think too much." Since the wizardry barrier had turned milky white and blocked the view of the outside world, she was not afraid of being exposed. It was only now that she could really treat her injuries. She tore open her trousers and exposed her thighs. Looking at the two big bloody wounds, she cursed the evil beast's ancestors in her heart. If this kind of wound was in the modern world, it would require dozens of stitches. Fortunately, she had medicine now. Magic medicine. It was too painful. With trembling hands, she cast a cleansing spell. After sweating for 2 days, she finally cleaned the wound and applied the medicine. Then, she watched helplessly as blood gushed out and washed away the medicinal liquid. Damn, Why aren't my elixirs working? Would Shenjuli give her a fake bottle in a moment of desperation? Ning Xuema didn't give up. She applied the medicine to the wound 2 more times. Every time she applied the medicine, blood gushed out and washed the medicine away. She had clearly sealed his acupuncture points to stop the bleeding. So why was this still happening? Ning Xuemo raised her hand and rubbed between her eyebrows. It seemed like she wasn't going to be able to enjoy the Almighty's medicine. She took out her medicine and tried it. Strangely, it was very effective. At the very least, it could coagulate the blood in the wound, but the effect was not great. The large piece of flesh on her thigh was sticking out and looked very frightening. She thought for a while and took out a surgical needle and thread. She lowered her head and started to stitch up the wound. She could make a needle and thread, but she couldn't make an anesthetic. Therefore, she had to endure the pain. As a result, she broke out in cold sweat again. Miao Fan had been in a coma. She didn't know if she was stimulated by the smell of blood, but she actually woke up with a groan. When she opened her eyes, she saw Ning Xuema sitting there and sewing her thighs with her mouth tightly closed. This scene shocked her. She screamed and stared at Ning Xuema with her eyes wide open. It was as if she was looking at a monster. Ning Xuema heard her movement and glanced at her casually. She ignored her and continued to stitch. Damn, it was so painful. Chapter 2098. She didn't know if it would leave a scar. Such a long scar on her leg would be too ugly. However, she probably wouldn't be able to wait until there was a scar, right? Miao Fan had been unconscious for the past few days and was obviously not in the right state at the moment. She moved her body and found that her whole body's power was sealed. With her current power, she was even worse than an ordinary person. She forced herself to sit up and looked around vigilantly, then looked at Ning Xuema. Where is this? What are you doing? She seemed to have thought of something. Why are you locked up with me? Haha, did you also offend him? So he hurt you like this as punishment? Bitch, you also have such a day. She didn't have time to finish her sentence because Ning Xuema slapped her with a wave of her hand. Not only did she shut her mouth, she even sealed her acupoints. Miao Fan fainted again and laid there like a dead fish. Ning Xuema shook her head. Noisy. A good fairy has become a pervert. She lowered her head and continued to sew her leg. A blue medicine bottle came in and landed beside her leg. Ning Xuema glanced at it. It was Shenjuli's other medicine for wounds, which also had an extraordinary effect. She moved her wrist, but didn't pick up the medicine bottle. She just said, "Thanks, but I don't need this anymore." She had faintly noticed that the injury caused by the purple demon beast was a bit special. The more powerful the medicine was, the more useless it was. It was better to have a little magic medicine. For example, the ones that she refined herself could be of some use. At least her medicine could stop the bleeding and had no side effects. To deal with this kind of injury, she could only use the medical skills that she learned in the modern world. She had already finished sewing one side. Her technique was really excellent. She could still sew the wound evenly even with such pain. It looked like a big centipede was lying on her leg. It could be used as a tattoo. She closed her eyes slightly, took a breath and calmed herself down. It was too painful to sew it directly. She had to slow down before she could sew the other side. She had been staying in the wizardry barrier and didn't see Shenjuli outside the barrier. His knuckles had turned pale, and the flute music almost went out of tune. She was hurt, wasn't she? She didn't even want to use his medicine. She was so strong that she didn't shed a single tear, even when her leg was injured to this extent. She was even smiling the whole time, and had the heart to command people to set up the formation. When he rescued her, he thought that she would be angry at him. He thought that she would cry. He thought that she would say that she hated him with red eyes. But there was none. She was normal, but she had learned to say thank you to him. Although others couldn't see her in the wizardry barrier, Shenjuli could still see her if he wanted to. He watched her clench her teeth and stitch up her own wounds. He watched her break out in a cold sweat. His heart felt like it had been stabbed by someone and was being stitched up needle by needle. If they weren't in such a situation, Shenjuli would have desperately pulled her out of the wizardry barrier and personally treated her wound, so that she wouldn't be in so much pain. It was his carelessness that caused her to suffer such a serious injury. He really wanted to cut all ties with her, so he let her fight on her own. Subconsciously, he thought that since she could break through his wizardry barrier in the Fanteon Palace, her skills should have increased to a certain level. The two purple evil beasts couldn't hurt her. But he didn't expect that there would be an accident. The two purple evil beasts suddenly demonized and caught her off guard. When he flew to the cliff and saw that he had lost her figure on the cliff, his heart almost sank into the abyss. Chapter 2099. The fear of losing her overwhelmed him. He almost didn't dare to imagine what would happen to him if she died like this. If she really fell into the special lava below, not only would her body melt, but her soul would also disappear completely. That way, she would really disappear forever. He desperately rushed down and saw the man from the celestial world rescuing her covered in blood. Her bloody appearance stung his eyes. Before he could think of what to do, he directly reached out and hugged her. When the petite body was in his arms, he knew he was finished. He couldn't abandon her at all. No matter how determined he was, it was useless. He put her in his wizardry barrier. Before he completed the sealing task, he didn't want to let her out again. She had suffered such a serious injury, so shouldn't she be recovering? At this moment, he was playing the bamboo flute to lead the last evil beast forward. Ning Xuema had lost a lot of blood. Blood dripped from the special small holes in the wizardry barrier. Naturally, it attracted the evil beast to chase after him. Ning Xuema couldn't see the situation outside from inside the wizardry barrier. However, she could feel that Shen Jili was moving forward. She could also hear the roar of the evil beast from inside the wizardry barrier. At this time, the other side of her wound was finally sewn up. She wiped the sweat on her forehead and sighed. She almost wanted to collapse and roll on the ground. After meditating for a while, she finally regained her strength. The wound wouldn't heal in a short time, but as long as she didn't bleed, she could support herself and jump around. Outside there was a low exclamation. "Oh no! This evil beast is escaping. Could it have sensed something? Hurry up and stop it." There was chaos outside, accompanied by the howling of the evil beast and the shouting of the people. Ning Xuema's expression changed slightly. She jumped up and hit the wizardry barrier. "Let me out." If the last evil beast really escaped, then all their previous efforts would be wasted. Perhaps only her appearance could make the evil beast continue to follow. Shen Jili ignored her. From the moment he put her in, he didn't plan to let her out. He cut his wrist again and let the divine blood drip down. He wanted to lure the evil beast to follow him and eat him. However, the evil beast seemed to have gone mad. No matter how good the food was, it could no longer move it. It crazily charged left and right, trying to break through the encirclement of the people and escape from this great formation. The people outside couldn't hear what was happening inside the barrier, but the people inside the barrier could still hear what was happening outside. Ning Xuema could hear that the situation outside was getting more and more chaotic. She could even feel that Shen Jili was moving quickly. Obviously, he was also blocking that evil beast. Ning Xuema suddenly clenched her fists when she heard the muffled sound of someone being injured. It was number 2's past life. Was he injured? She took a deep breath and continued to hit the barrier. "Supreme Divinity, let me out. We can't let our efforts go to waste. I have a way to lure it to the 8th seal." Shen Jili still didn't move. No one knew if it was because he didn't hear, or if it was because of something else. Ning Xuema calmed down. She knew that it was useless to beg him. She raised her hand and began to break the barrier. After all, she had been with Shen Jili for so long. She had a good understanding of Shen Jili's wizardry barrier. In addition, she had broken the most complicated one in Fanteon Palace. Therefore, it was relatively easy for her to break this one. After a moment, the barrier broke. She and Miao Fan rolled out of the barrier together. Shen Jili was fighting with the evil beast. Ning Xuema and Miao Fan fell on the side of the evil beast's mouth. Chapter 2100. The beast was about to pounce on Shen Jili when it suddenly saw Ning Xuema. Its pair of small eyes immediately turned red. It opened its big mouth and bit down on Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema also did not expect that she would be so unlucky. She cursed under her breath and was about to roll on the ground when her body suddenly flew up and crashed into someone's chest. At the same time, the beast bit down on empty air and was furious. It rushed forward and continued to pounce on Meow Fan. One of its huge hoofs stepped on Meow Fan, who had just woken up and was still in a daze. Meow Fan did not even have time to scream before she was crushed into meat paste by the hoof. Ning Xuema. Shen Juli's face changed greatly. The arm that was holding Ning Xuema suddenly tightened. Ning Xuema, are you an idiot? You've killed her. Ning Xuema. She also did not expect to be in such a situation. It was also not her intention to cause Meow Fan to be trampled to death. He was holding her too tightly. Ning Xuema was about to vomit. She could not help but struggle. You let go of me first. You're hurting me. Shinjuli's eyes darkened and his arm loosened slightly. However, he did not let go of her. Ning Xuema, if you don't want to die, you'd better behave. He hugged her to avoid the beast's bite and quickly retreated. Ning Xuema could now see the surrounding scenery clearly. Almost everyone present was injured. A few of them were seriously injured. One of them was number 2. He was missing an arm and was lying in a corner. Their current position was actually around the 7th seal. Obviously, they had left just now. However, the last beast suddenly became smart and turned around to run back. They could not stop it and allowed it to run back here. The last evil beast was the head beast, and it was also the most powerful. At this moment, after being demonized, it was the size of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. When it ran, the earth trembled. Not only did it want to run away, it also let out a long howl to summon its companions. The evil beast that was sealed began to crazily ram around inside the seal. However, the timing of Ning Xuema's appearance was just right. As soon as she appeared, she immediately attracted the evil beast's attention, and it pounced towards her. Shen Juli quickly retreated with her in his arms. The evil beast chased after them relentlessly. With the wind whistling in her ears, Ning Xuema saw from the corner of her eyes that number 2 had already stood up and was chasing after them with the others. She exhaled slightly and stayed in Shen Juli's arms, acting as bait. Everyone ran at top speed, and it didn't take long for them to reach the 8th seal. It took a lot of effort to seal the last evil beast. This evil beast was the smartest, so it was impossible to lure it into the sealing formation. Shen Juli hugged Ning Xuema in the eye of the formation and couldn't lure it either. Its 2 small eyes stared at the 2 people in the formation and began to retreat. Shen Juli frowned and was about to drip another drop of God's blood when Ning Xuema suddenly grabbed his hand. Wait! Her hand was slightly cold and was holding his thumb. Shen Juli resisted the desire to hold her hand and raised his eyebrows at her. What's wrong? Ning Xuema didn't look at him. She kept staring at the evil beast and quickly said, My blood can't attract it anymore, and yours won't work either. Don't waste your blood. Shen Juli naturally understood what she meant, but it was also a last resort. Otherwise, how could they attract it? I can drip more. Ning Xuema shook her head. It's useless. This beast is very smart. Between food and life, it chose the latter. If you want to attract it, you have to give it a strong drug. Chapter 2101. Ning Xuema shook her head. It's no use. This beast is very smart. Between food and life, it chose the latter. If we want to attract it, we have to give it a strong drug. A strong drug? What do you mean? Let me go and let me be the bait. If you keep hugging me like this, it will be defeated by your sword. It knows that it will never succeed if I stay in your arms, so, Ning Xuema suggested. Shen Juli froze and spat out 2 words coldly. Don't even think about it. She was still seriously injured and could not move freely. If she attracted the beast's attention alone, she would not be able to dodge the beast's lightning-fast attack. Ning Xuema lightly breathed in before slowly opening her mouth. Divine God, as I expected, you already want to sever all ties with me. Since that's the case, why are you being so wishy-washy? Shen Juli was speechless. Let me go. I think my life has nothing to do with you. Ning Xuema's face was slightly tense. I will not let my companions sacrifice themselves for no reason. Shen Juli finally found a legitimate reason to protect her. Ning Xuema closed her eyes slightly. When she opened her eyes again, her voice was even calmer. If you don't let me go, you will make more of your companions sacrifice themselves. Shen Juli could not refute because in such a short time, the beast had injured 2 more people. Divine Lord. Later you will lead everyone to guard the corner of the array. I will lure the beast over. You will activate the array and seal it in one fell swoop. Shen Juli paused for a moment. He naturally knew that what she said was the best way. But he was afraid that he would not be able to save her in time when she was in danger. Ning Xuema seemed to understand what he was thinking. Don't worry. Although I am lame, those evil beasts won't be able to capture me that easily. She smiled again. I attracted 2 beasts by myself just now, and I was attacked by 7 or 8 dark eagles. Weren't you very relieved? Shen Juli. Her last sentence was like a sharp needle that pierced his heart. He couldn't refute her. All right, let me go. Don't worry. I don't want to die yet. I can protect myself. Ning Xuema held his hand and twisted it. Shen Juli could only let go. Ning Xuema landed on the ground. After all, her leg was seriously injured, although it had already been stitched up. Once she landed on the ground, the soles of her feet hit the hard ground. Pain shot through her body like lightning. Her body stiffened slightly, but she stood firm. She raised her hand to wipe the cold sweat on her forehead. Her body suddenly rolled, and she was not far away from the evil beast. The evil beast had already retreated more than 10 steps when it suddenly saw Ning Xuema alone. It was stunned. It was still very cunning. Its small eyes narrowed. What? Why was this person alone? Was it a trap? It didn't immediately pounce over. It even raised its head to look at Shen Juli. It had suffered a lot under Shen Juli's hands just now. Although it was not afraid of being cut, this person's strength was too strong. It still felt very painful when it was cut. Shen Juli's face was slightly pale. He stood there and didn't have any intention of going forward to pick up Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema's roll just now had shaken her wound again. Blood seeped out from her injured leg and quickly dyed her new dress red. The air was filled with the smell of her blood. The evil beast sniffed. Its feet still didn't move, but it didn't retreat anymore. Chapter 2102. Ning Xuema rolled on the ground and got up again. Her leg was obviously in great pain, and her whole body was trembling. After getting up, she turned around to face the evil beast and retreated step by step. Suddenly, she tripped over something and fell down heavily with a groan. At this moment, she was already more than 100 feet away from Shen Juli, but only 6 to 7 feet away from the evil beast. As long as the evil beast suddenly jumped, it would be able to bite her directly. This was simply a huge temptation. The evil beast could no longer hold back. It jumped up and pounced on Ning Xuema like lightning. The evil wind blew, and the stench assailed her nostrils. At this moment of life and death, Ning Xuema desperately rolled away. The evil beast's sharp claws brushed past her skirt. She jumped up and seemed to be in a panic. She stumbled and ran forward, blood flowing all the way. Her running speed was not fast, and she looked like she would fall at any time. This made the evil beast itch, and it chased after her relentlessly. Ning Xuema knew that the evil beast was very suspicious. When she started to run, she did not run directly to the array core. Instead, she ran in circles around it. At first, the evil beast was still paying attention to the array core. Later, it gradually let down its guard and chased closer and closer. Everyone saw that Ning Xuema had brushed past the claws and teeth of the evil beast several times. It was really a matter of life and death. They all broke out in cold sweat for her. Fortunately, Ning Xuema had a special body movement. Although it seemed dangerous, she was always able to avoid the attack of the evil beast by a hair's breadth. After a moment, she finally ran to the array core and fell into the array core with a plop. The evil beast repeatedly failed to pounce on her and was furious. At this moment, it saw a rare opportunity and immediately pounced over. Start the array. Ning Xuema shouted from the array core. The moment the array was activated, she rushed out. Her ankle suddenly tightened. The evil beast's big claws hooked onto her trousers and was about to pull her back. Ning Xuema's heart tightened. If she let the evil beast pull her back, she was afraid that she would immediately fall into the mouth of the evil beast and be bitten in half. She could not break free for the time being. The righteous path was in trouble. A hand suddenly stretched out from the side and grabbed her wrist. At the same time, a violent hurricane slammed towards the evil beast. Chila! With a loud sound, Ning Xuema's trousers were torn in half. Her whole body was pulled out by that strong hand and fell into someone's embrace. As for that evil beast, it was directly smashed into its butt by the hurricane. Almost at the same time, the formation was activated. A golden light rose from the ground and enveloped the evil beast. Success! Success! Everyone started cheering. This time, Ning Xuema contributed the most to the sealing. If it wasn't for her, it would have been very difficult to successfully seal the last evil beast. She saved everyone's lives. He had saved the mythical continent. Long live the Demon Lord. Demon Master, you're the best. Long live the Divine Lord. The Supreme Divinity and the Demon Master shall rule the mythical continent forever. Countless cheers rang in her ears. Ning Xuema's heart was still beating wildly after escaping death. She was lying in Shen Juli's embrace. It was only at this moment that she felt the pain in her whole body. She was crawling and rolling on the ground just now. Not only did she tear open her wounds, but there were also many wounds on other parts of her body. At this moment, she was in so much pain that she wanted to bend over. Don't move. Shenjuli hugged her tightly. Since the 8 evil beasts were all sealed, his bamboo flute could finally stop for a moment. Demon Master, you're bleeding again. Demon Master, quickly heal your wounds. Demon Master, I have medicine here. It's most effective in healing injuries. Chapter 2103. Devil Master, it's better if you use Little Demons. Little Demon's medicine is most effective for people from both the monster realm and the devil realm. Devil Master, use mine. Devil Master. In a short moment, more than 10 people surrounded Ning Xuema and Ning Xuema. More than 10 hands stretched out, each hand holding a different kind of ointment. There were so many different kinds of ointment that it dazzled the eyes. Ning Xuema's heart warmed. Before she could say anything else, Shen Juli had already retreated with her and said, "You guys support the array first." They retreated to a spacious area. With a wave of his hand, he set up an egg-shaped enchantment. There were only the 2 of them inside the enchantment. Ning Xuema. This scene was a bit like a reenactment of the past. It made her heart skip a beat. Shen Juli's fingers were intertwined with hers. It was only at this moment that Ning Xuema realized that Shen Juli's palm was even colder than her own. Shen Juli placed her on a blanket that he had casually conjured and said, "Take it off." Ah. Ning Xuema looked at him in surprise. "Let me see your injury." Shen Juli squatted down. Without waiting for her to react, he directly tore open her trouser leg, revealing her injury. The wound split open again, and it looked like it was grimacing in pain. It was quite frightening. Ning Xuema was speechless. In just a moment, 2 of her trousers had already been torn. If she had known this would happen, she would have prepared a few more trousers in her storage space. Although his actions looked direct, they were not rough. When he tore open her trouser leg, he did not touch her injury. Ning Xuema was shocked by the wound that looked like a dog gnawing on it. She subconsciously sucked in a cold breath and said, "It hurts." "If you know it hurts, don't try so hard." Shen Juli rebuked her. Ning Xuema could only shut up. Shen Juli took out a bottle of medicine from his pocket and poured all the medicine into her wound. "This medicine doesn't work. The more you apply it, the more you bleed." Ning Xuema couldn't help but say. She had already used this medicine once. Before she could finish her sentence, she shut her mouth because Shen Juli had placed one of his palms on her thighs. Fresh blood gushed out from his palms and mixed with the medicine into her wound. Strangely enough, Shen Juli's medicine had a miraculous effect. The wound on her leg was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ning Xuema stared blankly. "So your blood has this kind of function?" Shen Juli ignored her and simply took off her clothes one by one. Ning Xuema was startled. He couldn't be thinking of taking her here, right? She was still a little girl, and there were so many injuries on her body. She subconsciously tugged at her collar. Don't! Before she could finish her sentence, she realized that she was thinking too much again. Shenjuli didn't mean to take her. Instead, he checked her other injuries. Her body was covered in bruises and bruises. It was a ghastly sight. Shenjuli's face didn't look good. She had old injuries on her body, and they weren't completely new. These old injuries should be caused by her breaking the enchantment of his Fanteon Palace. He thought that she had become a female Vajra after being possessed by the heavenly axiom. But it turned out that her body was still so fragile. She was so fragile, but she still wanted to do it. He raised his hand to treat her wounds one by one, and she was almost cured. Originally, Ning Xuema felt pain all over her body, but when his hand touched her body, it quickly relaxed and the pain disappeared. Ning Xuema looked down at him, and her eyes were slightly complicated. She wanted to hug his neck, but she resisted. She put her hands on both sides of her body and grabbed the blanket beside her. Chapter 2104. Does it hurt a lot? Shenjuli saw her movements. Ning Xuema shook her head slightly and did not say anything. She looked a little absent-minded, and her fingers were clenched tightly. She seemed to be trying hard to control something. After a while, he finally treated all the wounds on her body, including the small wounds on her fingers. He let out a sigh of relief when all of them were healed. He let her stand up and said, "Try moving around and see if there's anything wrong." Ning Xuema stood up and jumped a few times. She almost did not feel any pain. The Almighty's medical skills were really good. "How is it?" Shenjuli asked. "It's all healed. Your medical skills are really good. Thank you, Divine Lord." Ning Xuema saluted him and thanked him sincerely. Shenjuli was slightly stunned. He looked at her and asked, "Do you still hate me?" He did not like the way she tried to distance herself from him. Ning Xuema shook her head slightly and said, "Divine Lord, you think too much. I don't hate you." She paused and said, "I just suddenly realized that you are not the Almighty 50,000 years later. I will not treat you as him." Shenjuli's face turned pale. "You?" Ning Xuema smiled and stood up. "What the Supreme Divinity said is correct. The great God in 50,000 years might just be your reincarnation, but I'm treating you like him. This isn't fair to you, nor is it fair to him. I don't want to make such a mistake again." She walked to the edge of the wizardry barrier. "Divine Lord, now is not the time to talk about personal feelings. I only treat you as my companion now. Let's go out. There's no point in being entangled." Shenjuli felt like he was punched in the face. His handsome face was pale. He wanted to say something, but did not know how to say it. "Xuema, if you hate me for not saving you in time, I can apologize to you." Before he could say the word apologize, Ning Xuema interrupted him. "Divine Lord, there's no need to. I really don't blame you for this. I just want to understand. It's normal that you don't want to be someone else's substitute, since you're a supreme god. Originally I was wrong. Now I will correct my position. And I realized that I can't actually treat you as him. I love him, and it has always been him. Even if you are his past life, it won't work. All right, let's get out of here and stop arguing here." The barrier was broken, just like a broken heart. Ning Xuema walked out of the barrier without looking back. Everyone was anxiously waiting outside. Seeing that she was safe and sound, they all breathed a sigh of relief. One after another, they asked about her injuries. Ning Xuema turned in a circle on the spot, her clothes fluttering in the wind like a fairy descending to the mortal world. She smiled sweetly and said, "Divine Lord, your medical skills are amazing. I'm all better now." She waved her hand. "There's still one last step. Everyone work harder." A moment later, Shenjuli also strode out. His face was slightly pale. He did not pay attention to Ning Xuema and turned to leave. Ning Xuema looked at him from behind. Her gaze was complicated, but she did not say anything. A moment later he turned back. There was another barrier beside him. Inside the barrier, Miao Fan was lying inside with her eyes closed as if she was sleeping. Everyone opened their eyes in surprise. Miao Fan was clearly trampled into meat paste by the evil beasts just now. How could she be lying inside the barrier now? Everyone was smart enough not to ask about the Supreme God's matters. The 8 beasts were only temporarily sealed in different places. If they wanted to seal it completely, they still needed the cooperation of the various sealing points. Only by activating the largest formation in the center could they gather all the purple fiend underground and seal it completely. Chapter 2105. According to the original arrangement, Shunjuli would go to the center, and the others would stand at the 8 seals. The method was similar to the seal that Ningshuama had experienced 50,000 years later. Shunjuli turned and walked to the center. He did not look at Ningshuama from beginning to end, because Ningshuama was not included in the formation. After everyone was in place, Ningshuama had nothing to do. She smiled and said, "I'll be a patrol." She turned and walked away. In the golden formation, countless talismans were flashing. Shunjuli stood in the center of the formation and took out Miao Fan from the enchantment. He raised his hand, and a white light came out from his fingertips and gathered on Miao Fan. Miao Fan slowly opened her eyes. When she saw Shunjuli, she was stunned and said with a trembling voice, "Julie, did you save me? I thought I was trampled to death by that evil beast." Shunjuli looked down at her and said, "Miao Fan, you have to pay the debt you owe." Miao Fan had a bad feeling. She subconsciously wanted to sit up and said, Julie, what do you want me to do? I know I'm wrong. I was just used by Luo Jiuchen. I'm innocent." Shunjuli held her down with one hand and said, "A mistake is a mistake. Being used by someone can't erase this heinous crime. So, Miao Fan, you have to pay for your mistake." He took out a few drops of blood and dripped it between her eyebrows. One drop, Miao Fan's face changed. She was familiar with Shunjuli's method. That was the same method he used to turn her into little Shuema. She shouted, "Julie, don't turn me into her. I beg you, don't turn me into her." Before she could finish speaking, Shunjuli sealed her mute acupoint. She couldn't utter another word, but her eyes were wide open. Shunjuli's movements were methodical. After a while, Miao Fan turned back into little Shuema and said, "You can't let others bear the consequences of your sins. Miao Fan, after this seal is successful, I will collect your soul and send you into a good reincarnation." This was the only thing he could do for her, considering that she was once his sister in name. Tears rolled down from the corners of Miao Fan's eyes. She wanted to refute and beg for mercy, but unfortunately, Shunjuli didn't give her the chance. Everything was ready except for the east wind. Shunjuli closed his eyes slightly and stood at a position in the array. He said 2 words to the sound-transmitting amulet on his waist, "Begin." The array was activated. Countless characters jumped and rotated from the array. There seemed to be an invisible force in the air that pushed the slate under Shunjuli's feet. With a creaking sound, a black hole slowly appeared in the center of the array. The black hole was deep, and there was a whistling sound coming from the hole. The whistling sound was very strange. It sounded like thousands of ghosts were crying in unison, mixed with the roars of the 8 evil beasts. It was as if the gate of hell had been opened. The surrounding purple spirits rushed over as the array was activated. They turned around along with the array, but they seemed to be afraid of something and didn't want to enter the black hole. These purple spirits were actually the resentful spirits of thousands of victims. They were fierce, cruel, and had no thoughts. No matter what kind of creature they invaded, they could trigger the violent primer in the creature's body, making it completely crazy. There was no cure for it. They were actually a kind of obsession. They were only interested in the flesh and blood of their enemies and gods. In order to lure them into the black hole, bait was necessary, and this bait was Miao Fan. Chapter 2106. Shunjuli stretched out his hand, and Miao Fan's body flew into the air. Miao Fan, atone for your sins and be reincarnated into a better body in your next life. He flicked his finger, and blood dripped down from Miao Fan's limbs. The blood made the spinning purple specter stop and rush toward Miao Fan. Shen Juli waved his sleeve, and Miao Fan's body fell into the black hole. The purple specter also rushed into the black hole. Excited shouts, muffled chewing, and all kinds of creepy sounds came from the black hole. Shen Juli closed his eyes slightly and used his fingers to cast a spell, controlling the whole formation with his divine power. The spinning purple specter was like a waterspout, whistling in the air, and the sound was so loud that it sounded like the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. Almost no other sound could be heard in the whole formation. Just as Shen Juli expected, the purple specter inside and outside the formation gathered and rushed into the black hole. After a long time, the purple specter became thinner and thinner, and the whole formation could be seen clearly even without magic. Sweat beaded on Shen Juli's forehead, but he heaved a sigh of relief. Everything was going well. He only needed to hold on for another hour, and he could seal the most important purple specter. After he got out, he would use his divine power to remove the remaining purple specter, and the world would be saved. Half an hour later, the scene suddenly changed. The purple specter was still pouring into the black hole, but deep inside the black hole, there was a muffled whistling sound. The ground under their feet suddenly shook, as if the purple specter underground had turned into lava and was about to erupt. Shen Juli's face changed. The purple specter was not willing to be sealed and wanted to rebel. Once they broke out again, their strength would be twice as strong as before. By then, the mythical demon continent would be completely finished. The vibration was getting more and more violent, as if a volcano was about to erupt. Shen Juli's message-transmitting talisman, which was tied to his waist, was heard screaming, "Supreme Divinity, they are fighting back! Supreme Divinity, the purple specter has sunk into the ground, and now it seems to be floating up. Supreme Divinity, what should we do? It is coming out." Shen Juli commanded the crowd to suppress Zisha according to his command. At the same time, he took out his bamboo flute and played the divine tune again. When the sound of the flute rang out, the boiling below seemed to slow down a little, and the ground beneath their feet also shook a little less. Suddenly, the sound of a pipa tinkling could be heard. It matched perfectly with Shen Juli's zither music, and the effect was instantly doubled. Shen Juli's heart skipped a beat. He turned to look in the direction of the sound. He saw Ning Xuema walking towards him in a red dress. Her red dress was not like what she usually wore. It was shaped like a Taoist robe, and was extremely loose. It fluttered as she walked. Her black hair was draped over her shoulders, and was not tied into a bun. It was like a curtain or a waterfall, flying behind her. Even though Shen Juli did not cast any spells on her, she suddenly grew taller. She no longer looked like a 12 or 13-year-old girl, but like a 16-year-old girl. His brows were like distant mountains, and his eyes were like autumn waves. There was a snowflake-shaped cinnabar mole between her eyebrows, and it bloomed charmingly. Her waist was slender, and her body was enchanting. Her every move seemed to reveal a deadly charm. Her 10 fingers danced on the pipa as she walked over step by step. Chapter 2107. The sound of the flute and the sound of the pipa combined organically and flowed in the whole array. It was the first time that Shen Juli had seen her in such a dress. His heart was slightly moved, but this time he was trying his best to suppress Zisha. He couldn't be distracted. No matter how many doubts he had, he could only suppress them for the time being. Ning Xuema walked into the array and looked at Shen Juli across the black hole that was still swallowing Zisha. She didn't look at him, but concentrated on playing the pipa, as if it was the last song in her life. Every syllable and every gesture was perfect. Shen Juli closed his eyes slightly and didn't look at her. He just played the flute more quickly and melodiously. As he poured his divine power into it, golden talismans spun out of his flute and hovered in the air. Ning Xuema smiled slightly and poured her divine power into her hands. A red talisman came out of her pipa and rose into the air. The golden talisman and the red talisman met in the air. After a spin, they combined and rushed into the black hole. The perfect combination of playing lasted for an hour. The vibration of the ground was getting smaller and smaller. It seemed that Zisha was really suppressed by the combination of the two. Shenjuli didn't look relaxed. He looked up at Ning Xuema opposite him, and there seemed to be light waves flashing in his eyes. Ning Xuema finally looked up, and her eyes fell on his face. Her eyes were calm and emotionless. Shenjuli had seen all kinds of her. She acted coquettishly, she cried because he made her angry, she was naughty, she was coquettish, she was shameless, she was smiling. Every kind of her was so lively and vivid, like a ball of fire that broke into his peaceful life. His eyes unconsciously revolved around her. When he realized it, he was deeply immersed in it and couldn't pull himself out. He had seen so many sides of her, but he had never seen her like this. Her facial features were still the same, but her temperament was very different from before. Her body seemed to be covered with a layer of light, a layer of golden and red light. A pure devil's body was shrouded in black or red light. Immortals and deities, on the other hand, were surrounded by white or golden light. Take Shenjuli for example. Once he fully unleashed his aura, his entire body would be shrouded in white light. As for the golden light, it was a light that only Buddhas possessed. As for Ning Xuema, her body was shrouded in a dual-colored light. She looked like a demon and a Buddha at the same time. Inside, there was a red light with a golden edge. She stood in front of him like this, and he couldn't see any emotions in her eyes. This made Shenjuli panic for no reason, as if this person was going to leave him. Xuema. Once the seal is complete, let's have a good talk. Because the purple evil underground had shown signs of weakening, Shenjuli could finally divert his attention to say a few words. Perhaps what they lacked was communication, and this version of her made him feel a little unfamiliar. Ning Xuema lowered her eyes slightly, hiding the turbulent emotions in her eyes. She slightly curled her lips. I think I've said everything that needs to be said. There's nothing left for us to talk about. This sentence was actually very choking and sharp, especially her faint tone, which made it even more maddening. Shenjuli didn't go crazy. He looked at her quietly with deep eyes. You're hiding something from me. Ning Xuema sighed softly. Divine Lord, why do you have to worry about this? After all, I'm not the little Xuema from before. My character is very different from hers. I'm a soul from 50,000 years later. And you, maybe you'll still be you after 50,000 years. Chapter 2108. Ning Xuema sighed softly. Divine Lord, why do you have to worry about this? After all, I'm not the little Xuema from back then. Our personalities are very different. I'm a soul from 50,000 years in the future. And you, maybe you'll still be you after 50,000 years, or maybe you won't. There are also many differences in your personalities and ways of doing things. Because I missed him too much, I accidentally transmigrated here and fell in love with you. You're right. I actually really treated you as his substitute. This is my fault. I even let him down for what he did for me back then. You don't know how much he loved me back then. But I've always let him down. When I realized this, he was no longer in that world. I frantically searched for him, but I couldn't find him anymore. Her voice was a little choked, but Shenjuli's heart sank as he listened to her. The woman he loved so much was telling him how much she loved him in the future without any hesitation. Shenjuli dared to bet that there was no one in this world who was more miserable than him to encounter such a terrible thing. Her eyes seemed to be filled with tears. Shenjuli reached out his arms to hug her, but when he remembered that her tears were not for him, his arms slumped down. His heart was filled with pain. It was very painful, but he couldn't do anything about it. After pausing for a moment, he said in a hoarse voice, "Whether you love me 50,000 years in the future or not, you can't go back in the end, right?" He closed his eyes slightly, and there was a hint of almost inaudible pleading in his voice. Xuema, I'm still me. Whether I'm 50,000 years in the future or now, my soul is the same. If you can fall in love with him, you can naturally fall in love with me too. Didn't we get along very well before? In the past, he wouldn't have said such a thing. But now he wanted to try. He couldn't bear to lose her. She loved him 50,000 years in the future. But in the end, she still loved him. It was better than her falling in love with another man. Ning Xuema gazed at him. Divine Lord, little Xuema, and I also have the same soul. Have you fallen in love with her? Shenjuli was stunned. Little Xuema was indeed different in his heart. She had always been a very special existence. But if it was love, it seemed to be too early. A little less than love, but a little more than like. It was completely different from how he treated Ning Xuema now. And he couldn't mix them up. He did not want to lie. And he disdained to lie. So he shook his head slightly. Ning Xuema lowered her eyes. That's it. You and he share the same soul. But you're not him. And I've always loved him. Originally, I was muddle-headed and gave you the wrong impression. I'm sorry. If you hate me because of this, I have nothing to say. Shenjuli slowly tightened his grip on the bamboo flute. His knuckles turned white, and the light in his eyes gradually dimmed. After a long time he said, I don't hate you. Ning Xuema curled her lips into a smile. That's good. Divine Lord, no matter what, I hope you can forget. Just as she was about to say forget me, Shenjuli interrupted her. His voice was cold and indifferent. From now on, no matter what, I have nothing to do with you. Ning Xuema forced a smile. Yes. If I don't reincarnate, then I won't love you in the future, and I won't love you 50,000 years later. I'll forget you. Automatically erase all memories of you. Shenjuli said word by word. Chapter 2109. Ning Xuema closed her eyes slightly, but the smile on her lips did not change. All right. Boom. Suddenly, a loud noise came from underground, and the ground shook violently. The black hole that had just swallowed countless purple spirits suddenly spewed out a large cloud of purple smoke, which rushed straight toward Ning Xuema. Be careful. Shenjuli's expression changed. He and Ning Xuema were standing on opposite sides of the black hole. No matter how fast he moved, he was still some distance away. He could only watch as the large cloud of purple smoke wrapped around Ning Xuema and dragged her into the black hole. Xuema. Shenjuli did not care about anything else. He rolled up his sleeves and wrapped them around Ning Xuema's body, who was shrouded in purple smoke. He pursed his lips and pulled her back. Xuema, you have to hold on. The strength of the purple smoke was unusually strong, and it pulled Ning Xuema down desperately. Shenjuli's kung fu was so strong, but he could not pull her down. The two forces were entangled with Ning Xuema's body. The purple smoke wrapped around Ning Xuema's legs, and Shenjuli's sleeves wrapped around her slender waist. Under the pull of two opposing forces, even someone as strong as Ning Xuema could not bear it. She groaned. Although the sound was very low, it was like a sharp knife cutting into Shenjuli's heart. He suddenly tilted his body and hung upside down. He grabbed Ning Xuema's hand and said, Xuema, I'll save you. His voice was trembling. Ning Xuema raised her head and looked directly into his eyes. There seemed to be wind and clouds in his eyes. Her lips trembled slightly. Suddenly, she bit her index finger and made a strange seal in her hand. I'll use my body to save the 6 realms. The heavenly axiom has faith. Fulfill my oath. Don't go against it. After saying this string of curse-like words, Ning Xuema backhanded her palm and slapped the blood seal on the back of Shenjuli's hand. Shenjuli felt as if he had been electrocuted. His hand suddenly lost its strength, and Ning Xuema's little hand fell from his grasp. He turned pale with fright. Fortunately, his sleeves were still wrapped around her slender waist. He was about to use his sleeves to lift her up again. The sky splitter sword suddenly appeared in Ning Xuema's hand. Her voice trembled slightly. Supreme Divinity, I'm going to find him. If fate wills it, we'll meet again in the Tianci continent after 50,000 years. No! Shenjuli shouted. However, it was too late. The sky splitter sword in Ning Xuema's hand flashed and cut his sleeves. The purple smoke dragged her body and tumbled down. Shenjuli's expression changed greatly. Almost without hesitation, he jumped down as well. Ning Xuema, if you only love the reincarnated me, then I'll reincarnate with you. Just as he jumped down, a ball of extremely bright golden red light suddenly rose from under his feet. That light was like an extremely sturdy barrier, and it directly lifted him up. Before he could stabilize himself, A loud rumbling sound came from below. The black hole suddenly closed up, and there was no longer any gap. "Shuamo!" he shouted and suddenly broke free from the golden red light's restraint. He pounced down and slapped the hole that had already closed up. He wanted to pull her out. He wouldn't allow her to be alone in that dark underground. She would be afraid. He was a god, and he could go against heaven and earth. His palm had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Not to mention a closed hole. Even if it was a stone mountain, it would be flattened by his palm. An earth-shattering loud sound rang out. At the place where the hole originally was, a bottomless pit was finally blasted out. Dust and stone fragments flew everywhere, covering the sky and the sun. Chapter 21:10. At the original location of the cave entrance, he finally blasted out a bottomless pit. Dust and debris flew everywhere, covering the sky and the sun. He jumped down. "Shuama, I'm here to save you." His feet landed on solid ground, but it was only solid ground. This pit was a solid pit with a bottom. He desperately groped around inside with his hands, but he couldn't touch her. He couldn't touch her anymore. She had already disappeared, together with those damned Zisha. From now on, he could no longer see her trace. His heart felt like it was being cut open. The pain was unbearable. Rumble! His earth-shattering palm strike, and the success of the original ceiling formation caused the whole mountain to collapse. Countless boulders fell, and countless fallen trees tumbled. Dust and debris covered the sky. The whole Jai mountain was collapsing. In this ceiling battle, there were only a few dozen people who were lucky enough to survive. At this moment, these dozens of people were floating in the air, looking down at everything. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief, but their hearts were also extremely heavy. The purple spirits were successfully sealed, but the whole 6 realms were destroyed. Only a few dozen people survived, but it was only a temporary survival. Because they had stayed in the strongest purple spirits, and were injured, the purple spirits had invaded their blood. It was only a matter of time before they died from the poison. How long would it take for the celestial demon continent to recover its previous prosperity? There were still strands of purple mist floating in the air. Those were the remnants of the purple evil chi. Although they had lost their source and could no longer grow, they would not disappear on their own. It was still very dangerous for them to continue floating in the world. "Where's the Divine Lord?" Someone looked around. "I don't know. I didn't see him come out." They were all automatically ejected after the formation was successfully activated. "Ah, the Devil Lord is not here either." Someone else found something. Could it be that the Divine Lord and the Devil Lord left together after the sealing? I heard them playing the flute and pipa together. That sound was like the sound of nature. No way. The remaining purple spirits have not been purified. The Divine Lord will not leave. Ah, the Divine Lord is coming up. The Divine Lord. The Divine Lord. A person slowly rose up from the dust cloud below them. When everyone saw that person's face, they were all stunned. The Supreme Divinity, who used to be the most celestial with his fluttering white robes, calm and dignified, was now covered in dust and grime. His hair was grayish-white, and his loose white robes were tattered with black and yellow patches. It was almost impossible to tell his original color. When he flew up, his celestial steps were unsteady. Supreme Divinity. Divine Lord. Everyone went up to her, and someone asked impatiently, "Supreme Divinity, where is the Devil Lord? Where is the Devil Lord?" Shinjuli's deep blue eyes turned to look at him. His eyes were cold and empty. There was a strong aura around him. When the cold aura was released, the surrounding temperature dropped abruptly. The cloud under everyone's feet instantly froze into a lump of ice and fell straight down. Shinjuli stood there, his sleeves hanging down. The wind lifted his long hair, strands of snow-white hair. He lowered his eyes slightly. "Devil Master? Who is the Devil Master?" His voice was cold and emotionless, as if he was at a loss in cold. There was another celestial in front of him with high cultivation. Because he was farther away, the cloud under his feet was not frozen. He heard the Supreme Divinity's low voice and widened his eyes in shock. Chapter 21:11. The Divine Lord seemed to have lost his memory. He had lost his memory. Shenjuli looked at himself and seemed to be puzzled. Why am I in such a sorry state? He brushed his sleeves and his messy robe was finally tidied up. Suddenly, a hairpin slipped out of his sleeve and fell to the ground. He caught it subconsciously. It was an exquisitely carved jade phoenix hairpin. The jade was suet jade, and every feather of the phoenix was so intricate and lifelike. He recognized that it was his own work. It was carved by hand without using any psyche power. It was not a simple task to carve such a hairpin. He looked at the hairpin in his palm with deep eyes. Who did he carve this hairpin for? Although he always liked to carve things to pass the time, he had never carved anything for a girl. The hairpin was exquisite, but he felt heartbroken when he looked at it. He narrowed his eyes and threw it away. The hairpin fell to the ground and disappeared in an instant. His heart ached for no reason. A mouthful of blood rushed to his throat, but he forced it down. After the pain was gone, he looked around and saw the purple spirits floating in the air. He exhaled and made a gesture. The heavy rain lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Shenjuli used most of his remaining divine power to purify the 6 realms. 10 days later, fiery gold seaside. Shenjuli stood quietly by the seaside in a white robe. Fiery gold seaside was a sea of death that even immortals could not cross. It was rumored that there was a space-time door in the depths of the sea. It was the only place in the celestial demon continent that led to the outside world. Of course, it was just a rumor. No one could verify the authenticity of the rumor, because the person who tried to verify it never came back. The celestial demon continent was a wasteland. There was no one in the 6 realms. He was the only one left. He was lonely, unprecedentedly lonely. Subconsciously, he did not want to face such a bleak 6 realms and wanted to leave. Therefore, he closed the Fanteon Palace and came to the seaside, the Tianxi continent. This was the only thing left in his mind. Could the other end of the sea lead to the Tianxi continent? He waved his sleeves and a boat made of psyche power appeared in the sea. He jumped on it. Half a month. It had been half a month since the allied forces of the 3 realms attacked Emo Palace. All kinds of powerful people unleashed all kinds of spells at the same time, shaking the barrier that the 8 divine beasts had built with all their strength, causing it to sway and become thinner and thinner. Emo Palace had already run out of food. The devils in Emo Palace were so hungry that their eyes turned green. They all wanted to take a bite of the stone lions by the roadside. The 8 great mythological beasts had been running out of food for a few days, yet they were still able to hold on for so long. They were already at the end of their rope. The soldiers of the 3 realms outside couldn't charge in, but the people of Emo Palace couldn't get out either. They could only defend the city of Worry. Inside the Emo Palace, there was a gloomy atmosphere. It was not scary to be besieged. What was scary was not knowing how long they would be besieged, because they couldn't see any hope. The people of the 3 realms seemed to have made up their minds. They wouldn't retreat unless they got an explanation they wanted. In this encirclement battle, the people of the 3 realms had the upper hand. It was only a matter of time before Emo Palace was conquered. The explanation that the leader of the 3 realms wanted was to hand over the 8 great mythological beasts and the Devil Master, who had started a massacre in the immortal prison. Of course, the Devil Master's son also had to be handed over, because there were rumors that the Devil Master was the one who had sent the 8 great mythological beasts to break the prison. They could be considered the instigators. Although most of the people in Emo Palace were ruthless devils, those who could enter Emo Palace were all carefully selected by General Manager Himu. Not only were they powerful, but they were also absolutely loyal to the Devil Master. Chapter 21:12. Most of the demons were arrogant and untamed. They feared nothing, and had never been willing to be threatened by other realms. Naturally, they were unwilling now. They would rather fight to the death with the people of the 6 realms. Asking them to hand over their spiritual leader, the Devil Master, was simply a pipe dream. However, being surrounded like this, hiding in Emo Palace like a coward, was really too stifling. Almost every demon was suffocated to the point of bursting into flames. Every day, there was an endless stream of demons requesting Manager Himu to fight. Those with fiery tempers were practically pointing at him and cursing him for being a coward. Manager Himu only had one word to reply to anyone who requested to fight. Wait. The first day they waited, the second day they waited, the fifth day they waited, and the eighth day they waited. It had already been half a month, but it was still the same wait. All the demons were furious from waiting. If it weren't for the fact that they were usually more convinced of Manager Himu's authority, they would probably roll up their sleeves and give him a good beating first. Just how long do we have to wait? Turtle just give us a quick answer. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to suffer this anymore. Those bastards are blocking the door and not letting us out. They're too cowardly. That's right. I'd rather go out and fight to the death with them. My head is as big as a bowl. Even if I have to die, I can drag a few of them down with me. Turtle just say the word. We can't wait any longer. In the conference hall, all kinds of curses and requests to fight almost broke through the roof. Turtle we really can't go on like this. We've already been starved for 3 days. If we rush out and fight now, we still have the strength. At the very least, we can drag a few of them down with us. If we wait any longer, we'll be so hungry that we don't have any strength left. If they break through Mo Palace, we'll only be slaughtered. Manager Himu's mouth was also burning with anger. His expression was still calm, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. Wait one more day. Manager Himu still knew some inside information about the Devil Master. The Devil Master would often mysteriously die, but he would come back from the dead after 7 or 8 days. The Devil Master had once said that if something like this happened to her again, he had to wait. He had to wait for her to come back to life. The longest she had given him was 16 days. There was only 1 day left. Therefore, he had to wait. He believed that as long as the Devil Master woke up, he would be able to resolve this crisis and beat the crap out of the people from the 3 realms. The Great Devil Master's frequent death was a top secret in the Mo Palace. Only little Nyenma, the 8 mythological beasts, and General Manager Himu knew the inside story. As for the others, the news they received was that the Devil Lord was gravely ill, and had already fainted. Head Steward Himu was trying to treat him. In Mo Palace, Head Steward Himu was the head steward of Mo Palace. His medical skills were also top-notch. In the Devil world, he had always been known as a divine doctor. Since he said that he was treating the Devil Master's illness, all the devils believed him. Everyone was hoping that the Devil Lord would wake up and lead them to beat up those bastards outside. Himu, how is the Devil Master? Some people couldn't keep their cool. Head Steward Himu pursed his thin lips and didn't answer directly. Let's wait for another day. He turned around and walked out. A blood-red crystal coffin. Half of the blood coffin was filled with a blood-like liquid. Ning Xuema's body was soaked in this blood, floating up and down in it. Shen Nianma sat next to the blood coffin with his little hands tightly clenched. Chapter 21:13. Shen Nianma sat next to the blood coffin. His little hands were clenched tightly, and his big eyes were bloodshot. He stared at his mother in the blood coffin and realized that he had lost a lot of weight. His round little face had now become a pointy chin, and his eyes looked even bigger. The blood coffin was General Manager Himu's magical weapon, and the blood inside was mixed by the demons in the Mo Palace. Of course, there was also little Xuema's god's blood in the middle. This was General Manager Himu's secret technique. He used blood to nourish the corpse so that the body would not rot or become stiff. His mother was already a little stiff, but after she was soaked in the blood, her body slowly returned to its softness. Except for the coldness, she was no different from when she was alive. But can Mother come back in the end? It had been half a month. Half a month. She did not seem to be waking up. Even her face. Her face was as pale as a dead person's. The last few times his mother's soul left her body did not show such symptoms, but this time, there were footsteps outside, and General Manager Himu walked in. He first looked at Ning Xuema in the blood coffin. He put his palm on the crystal coffin for a moment, and shook his head slightly. The person in the coffin did not show any signs of waking up at all. Once a person died, the blood in the body would not flow, and the body would gradually become stiff. The first few times Ningxuama's soul left her body, the blood in her body would flow, but at a much slower speed. If one did not pay attention, one would not be able to feel it. However, this time, when her body began to stiffen, the blood really stopped flowing. The blood coffin made by General Manager Heimu had the effect of making the blood in the body flow again. It was quite effective in the first few days, but now the effect was getting weaker. The Devil Lord's body showed signs of stiffening again. If it stiffened again, even if the Devil Lord's soul came back, this body could no longer be used, and there would be no place for his soul to stay. Moreover, the Devil Lord might not be able to come back. General Manager Heimu's fingers were clenched tightly in his sleeves. Every time he touched the crystal coffin, he was full of hope to see a miracle, but every time, he was disappointed. Now, he was almost desperate. "Heimu, will my mother never wake up again?" Shen Yinma asked softly. His voice was hoarse, as if he had not drunk water for a few days. Head steward Heimu looked at the child in front of him. This child had already stayed in front of this coffin for half a month without sleeping or resting. General Manager Heimu was worried that Shen Yinma would hurt his body, so he tried his best to persuade him to take a rest. However, Shen Yinma only shook his head. He had to stay here, as if his mother would disappear completely in the blink of an eye. Therefore, he did not dare to blink. He wasn't in the mood to eat at all. However, head steward Heimu advised him to take care of his body. That way, when his mother came back and saw him, her heart wouldn't ache. This sentence hit Shen Yinma's heart hard. So he began to eat. Even if he had no appetite, he would force himself to eat. At the end of the day, he was still a child. Usually, such a young child would still be in the arms of his parents. But he had already experienced several life and death separations. He had already lost his father, and now he was about to lose his mother. No matter how strong he was, he could not bear it. Therefore, he quickly lost weight, until only his head was left. General Manager Heimu squatted beside him. "Young master, if you want to cry, then cry. You will feel better if you cry." Chapter 21:14. The child was now holding all his emotions in his heart. Manager Heimu was really worried that he would hurt his body. Shen Yinma slowly shook his head. It was not that he did not want to cry, but even if he cried, he would not be able to find his parents, and he would not be able to find anyone who could really comfort him. After all, Manager Heimu had been with him for a long time, so he knew his character. In fact, he was quite a baby who loved to cry. He would cry so much that the Devil Master did not know what to do, and wanted to give him the stars and the moon in the sky. This time, the Devil Master still did not wake up. Manager Heimu thought that little Nianma would cry his eyes out, but he did not expect that he did not shed a single tear. When Manager Heimu saw him like this, his heart ached as if it was on fire. After all, this child was still a baby. He should be at the age where he acted like a spoiled child in front of his parents. No matter how precocious he was still a child. Head steward Heimu almost wanted to hug him and comfort him. However, the little guy did not allow anyone to hug him. When the Devil Master was alive, he often stuck to the Devil Master like a dog's skin plaster, and could not be shaken off. But now, he did not allow anyone to hug him. There was even a kind of dignity in his body. There was a kind of divine pressure that made people not dare to act rashly. Initially, Manager Heimu did not feel it, but these days, he faintly felt that Shen Yinma was becoming more and more like the Divine Lord. Shen Yinma looked up. "Heimu, my mother's soul did not leave her body this time, right?" He slowly clenched his fingers, and the joints of his small fingers cracked. Did Luo Jiuchen, that bastard, cast a spell on her body? Did he actually kill her in the prison? These days, Manager Heimu actually had this suspicion, but he dared not say it at this time. He did not want to make such a young child feel hopeless, although he himself was almost hopeless. He paused and said, "Luo Jiuchen should not be so wicked, right? Didn't the young master say that he would not personally hurt you and your mother? If he violated the promise, I am afraid that he would be struck by lightning." Shen Nianma was silent for a moment. He did not have to do it himself. Manager Heimu was speechless. It was true. Even if Luo Jiuchen did not do it himself, he could have asked someone else to do it. Shen Nianma added, I am afraid that the Celestial Kingdom has contributed a lot to this. Head Steward Heimu took a deep breath and didn't say anything. Shen Nianma's eyes were bloodshot. If my mother is really dead this time, I will kill everyone in the celestial world. Skin Luo Jiuchen alive and break his bones to take revenge. His tone was awe-inspiring. That little child actually had a murderous aura emanating from him made Head Steward Heimu's heart turn cold for no reason. Young master, where there's life there's hope. This time, if we really have no other choice, I hope that young master will consider the bigger picture, Head Steward Heimu said in a deep voice. If the Devil Lord still couldn't wake up, then the young lord would be the hope of the Devil Realm's resurgence in the future. He didn't want the young lord to do anything impulsive in a moment of anger. With his current ability, wanting to fight to the death with the celestial realm was undoubtedly like throwing an egg at a rock. Other than losing his life, there was no other benefit. If it really came to the point of mutual destruction, Head Steward Heimu would think of a way to send young master away. He was just afraid that after sending young master away, young master would force his way back. Therefore, he had to make it clear to little Nianma. However, would such a young child understand the principle of retreating in order to advance? Chapter 21:15. However, would such a young child understand the principle of taking a step back in order to advance? General Manager Heimu was not sure. He still wanted to say something to persuade him. But Shen Nianma looked up and said in a calm tone, Heimu, I will not do anything impulsive. He took another breath and said word by word, I will kill them one by one when I have the power. I will not let any of them go. General Manager Heimu's eyes lit up. This was the son of the Devil Lord. He could finally let go and make arrangements for the aftermath. He looked at Ning Xuema in the blood coffin and closed his eyes slightly. Devil Lord, you can rest in peace with a son like this. I will risk my life to protect the young master and never let him be hurt. General Manager Heimu got up and looked out of the window. The sky outside was as dark as ink. Another day had passed. If the Devil Lord did not wake up tomorrow, he would carry out the last step. It was a step that would destroy everything. Because of the wizardry barrier covering the sky, the masters from other worlds would attack the barrier from time to time. It was as if there was a layer of water in the sky, which was constantly vibrating. Even in the depths of Emo Palace, the sound of the attack could be heard. Since the three worlds attacked Emo Palace, there had been a continuous roar outside Emo Palace. General Manager Heimu strode out. He found the mythical beast, Baizhe, which was supporting the wizardry barrier at the northernmost end. Baizhe's original form was there. Its once glossy fur was now dull, and its eyes were bloodshot. However, it still stood there valiantly, as firm as a mountain. It was not easy for the 8 mythical beasts to support the wizardry barrier. It consumed their divine power. Fortunately, it could protect the entire Emo Palace from all directions. Many masters from the 3 worlds wanted to come in through the ground, but when they reached the bottom of Emo Palace, it was as if there was a diamond above their heads. They could not get in no matter how hard they tried. This time, they had the help of the people from the underworld. They were good at penetrating. Logically speaking, nothing could stop the people from the underworld. However, when they encountered the wizardry barrier of the 8 mythical beasts, they were helpless. However, they had been supporting it for so long, and now they were almost exhausted. Has the Devil Master woken up? This was the first thing Baizhe said when he saw Manager Heimu. Head Steward Heimu shook his head slightly. Baizhe's eyes were filled with disappointment as he said in a low voice, This barrier can only last for a day at most. General Conduit Heimu said, I know. Maybe it's time for us to start our final plan. In the future, I'll leave young master to you. The road of escape in the future will be very difficult. You have to be mentally prepared. Baizhe's eyes were filled with determination as he raised his head and laughed. I've been mentally prepared for this for a long time. As long as the 8 of us are still breathing, we will protect the little master's safety. Once Palace Missouri fell this time, the Devil World would definitely be destroyed. The other 3 realms would definitely think of ways to hunt down the brothers and the young devil master endlessly to eliminate the source of the problem. Therefore, the road ahead was still very long and bumpy. Head steward Heimu took out a jug of wine. We're about to part. Would you like a farewell drink? Baizé laughed heartily. You actually hid it from me. Hadn't they already run out of food for a few days? Why are you hiding such a good thing? General Conduit Heimu smiled. I prepared this jug of wine for today. I've always been reluctant to drink it. He took out another empty jug and divided it into 2 halves. He threw one to Baizé, who directly caught it with his big mouth. Chapter 21:16. For the future return of the young master, let's do it. I won't let you down. Let's do it. Inside the brightly lit tent. Your Majesty, if nothing goes wrong, the barrier created by the 8 divine beasts will be broken tomorrow. The commander of the celestial world bowed and reported to the celestial Varch. The celestial Varch nodded slightly, and his voice was full of pressure. Give them an ultimatum. If they don't hand over the 8 divine beasts and the young master of the demon world, no one in the Emo Palace will be spared. Your Majesty, there's something I don't understand. The human emperor beside him interrupted. Please speak. Your Majesty, since we can break through the Emo Palace tomorrow, why worry about not being able to catch the people we want? Why is there a need to give them an ultimatum? In my humble opinion, they are meat on the chopping board now. We can do whatever we want with them, and there's no need to mention any conditions to them. That's right, I think so too. The demons originally lived in a barren place like the dark demonic world, but because of the demon master, they seized many good territories in the 6 realms, causing the 6 realms to be in chaos. Now is the time to set things right, so we don't have to talk to them about any conditions. When the time comes, we can just catch the 8 divine beasts and that little brat and punish them to give justice to the victims. As for the others, we can kill them or let them go. We just have to chase them back to the demon world. The young master of the underworld suggested. The celestial Varch didn't comment and just smiled faintly. Do you all think that we can catch the 8 divine beasts once the barrier is broken? Everyone looked at each other, and one of them said, the Emo Palace barrier was created by the 8 divine beasts. Once the barrier is broken, won't they be at the end of their rope? Won't it be easy to catch them? The celestial Varch sneered. You've underestimated the 8 divine beasts. You probably haven't heard of their deeds. Please elaborate. The 8 divine beasts used to be the 8 evil beasts. The birth of each of them was a bloodbath, and each of them was powerful enough to overturn a mountain. Once they fought, they could destroy a world, and there would be no living creatures within thousands of miles. Back then, when they were wreaking havoc, even 100,000 heavenly soldiers were unable to capture them and suffered heavy losses. It was the Reverend God who came out and subdued them one by one with a supreme technique. Then, he brought them back to the Brahma Palace and turned them into stone statues. He used his divine power to remove the evil aura from their bodies over a long period of time. It took him tens of thousands of years to completely tame them. The Reverend God was afraid that they would go out and cause trouble, so he usually used a secret technique to imprison them in the Brahma Palace and turn them into stone statues. It was only recently that it was completely revived, and it even recognized the demon son as its master. The celestial emperor told everyone about the origins of the 8 great mythological beasts that he had read in ancient books. Although it was only a few words, it was enough to shock everyone. One of them still had some doubts. According to what Your Majesty said, these 8 mythological beasts are indeed powerful. But why didn't they directly fight back when they were besieged this time, but instead set up this kind of enchantment? The celestial emperor said, they are divine beasts that have been taught by the supreme divinity, so they don't usually hurt people. Besides, they've been sealed for more than 50,000 years, so they should be much weaker than before. Your Majesty's words are reasonable, but I always feel that something is a little strange. With the power of the 8 divine beasts, if they ran away from the beginning, we probably wouldn't have been able to catch them. I didn't expect that they would be willing to stay here and guard the city. What are they protecting? Or what are they waiting for? In other words, the demon realm had no other reinforcements. Chapter 21:17. In other words, there are no other reinforcements in the Devil Kingdom. What are they waiting for? Or were they actually still waiting for some mysterious reinforcements? But who could this mysterious savior be? According to the report, the Devil Master is seriously ill and unconscious. Are they waiting for her to wake up? The Celestial Emperor's face was gloomy. He had received the exact news that the Devil Master Shuama was dead. However, he did not see the body with his own eyes, so he was not at ease. If the Devil Master was only unconscious, once she woke up and found that her son and subordinates were being forced to do so, she would not let it go easily. However, these days, the successor of the Divine Lord seemed to have disappeared. No matter what method the Celestial Emperor used, he could not contact him. The Celestial Emperor once personally went to the Fanteon Palace to take a look. He could only vaguely hear a sound from inside, but he could not tell what it was. Without the master of the Fanteon Palace to open the door, the Celestial Emperor could not enter. Gradually, the Celestial Emperor did not dare to count on Luo Jiuchen anymore. He only wanted to catch the 8 mythological beasts as soon as possible and get the body of the Devil Master Shuama out, so that he could execute her with a secret technique. Of course, he had to eliminate the root of the problem. Shen Yanma also had to be eliminated. The son of the celestial god and the great devil must be very talented. Once he grew up, his revenge would be very tragic. This was the Celestial Emperor's plan. But it was a little dirty, and it was not convenient to say it in public. Therefore, he just coughed and said, "The Devil Master has made a big mistake. Whether she is unconscious or dead, she must be judged by the 6 realms. She must be punished according to the heavenly law to bring justice to the 6 realms." Basically, the people in the tent were the leaders of the 4 realms. Originally, it was the 3 realms. Later, the underworld joined in the name of avenging Yama. Now it was the union of the 4 realms. These leaders were all old foxes who had been in the world for a long time. Naturally, they understood the seriousness of the situation. If the Devil Master was dead, the 8 mythological beasts would definitely escape with the young master. There would be endless trouble in the future. If the Devil Master was not dead, once she woke up, there would be a bloody storm. Therefore, whether the Devil Master was dead or not, they had to conquer the Emo Palace as soon as possible. Your Majesty, are you saying that once the Emo Palace is broken, the 8 mythological beasts will escape with the young master? The Celestial Dharch nodded. That's most likely the case. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Even if the 8 great mythological beasts have reached the end of their tether, if the 8 of them join forces to break out of the encirclement, no one should be able to stop their sharpness. Therefore, it is best to force them to hand over the person themselves. He paused for a moment, and then found a fair and just reason. No matter what, this disaster was caused by the 8 great divine beasts and the Devil Master. It has nothing to do with the other devils in Emo Palace. We are benevolent and righteous people, so we should try not to kill them all. As long as they are sensible enough to make friends with us, we can let them live. Suddenly, a brilliant firework-like light exploded in the sky above Mo Palace. The devils of Emo Palace were gathered in the martial arts field to discuss countermeasures. When they saw the light, they all looked up. Lines of words slowly flashed in the sky above Molan. Ultimatum. Hand over the 8 great divine beasts and the Devil Master's devil son, and we can let you all live. He would never kill the innocent. Otherwise, I will bathe Emo Palace in blood. The lines of words were golden and full of power. The devils became restless and started cursing. The 8 guardians of Emo Palace looked at each other. Suddenly they raised their hands together. 8 rays of red light shot up, and a line of sonorous and powerful words appeared below the barrier. Hypocrites, see you on the battlefield. Chapter 21:18. This was destined to be a sleepless night. The demons of Emo Palace rubbed their palms together. Their days of being cowards had finally come to an end. They would rather die in battle than be trapped and slowly starved to death. Hot blood was boiling in his veins, clamoring for release, clamoring for a great massacre. In the main tent of the Four Realms outside Emo Palace. Your Majesty, they still refused to surrender and even issued a challenge, a spy reported. The Sky Emperor narrowed his eyes and said coldly, I've already given them a chance. They gave it up on their own accord, so don't blame us for being impolite. Now is the time to eliminate the demons and restore the might of the immortals. He immediately dispatched troops with the other masters of the three realms. If the barrier of Emo Palace is broken, what should we do if they split up and escape? Someone asked. The Sky Emperor's eyes shone with sharpness. Gather all the troops and hunt down the 8 divine beasts, and the son of the demon. We can ignore the rest for now and surround them in the future. The 8 divine beasts, and the son of the demon, were the biggest threat to him. As for the other demons, they were just a bunch of mobs. Once their leader was captured, they would not be able to do anything. It would not be too late to deal with them slowly. Your Majesty, Venerable Yi Tianli requests an audience, someone reported. The Sky Emperor's eyes lit up. Invite him in. Yi Tianli was once the strongest person in the immortal world. Back then, Ning Xuema chopped off one of his hands, forming a grudge. The Sky Emperor thought that he would definitely be crippled, but he did not expect that his hand could be reattached. His performance in the battle to seal Zisha was remarkable, and the Sky Emperor had a whole new level of respect for him. He was originally the strongest person in the immortal world, and after the battle with Zisha, he was favored by the Sky Emperor. Ning Xuema mistakenly killed the Sky Emperor's sister at a banquet in the immortal world. Yi Tianli was among the people who captured Ning Xuema, and he contributed the most. This time, the Sky Emperor sent him to contact the hidden masters from the other realms to assist in the attack on Emo Palace. Now he had finally rushed back. Yi Tianli did not disappoint him. This time he brought back 10 masters. They were all famous hermits. Any one of them could defeat 10,000 people. The Sky Emperor was overjoyed and rewarded Yi Tianli and his companions heavily. He also gave Yi Tianli a new mission. After the enchantment of Emo Palace was broken tomorrow, Yi Tianli and his companions were to ambush in the sky with the sky net and wait for the opportunity to capture the 8 mythological beasts and the son of demon. The night gradually receded, and a line of white appeared in the east. Dawn was about to break. Shen Nianma sat in front of the blood coffin for another night. No one came to disturb him, and no one came to comfort him. Under such circumstances, any consolation would be superfluous. Outside, the first rays of the morning sun rose and shone into the room through the window lattice. Shen Nianma squinted his eyes and then turned his head to look into the blood coffin. His face was already pale, and his fingers were clenched tightly. Mother! His little hand touched the blood coffin. His voice was hoarse and dry. Do you not want Nianma anymore? Young master, how is the devil master? Steward Himu strode in. Shen Nianma did not speak. He only looked at the blood coffin. Steward Himu looked into the blood coffin, and his body stiffened slightly. Inside the blood coffin, with the first ray of the morning sun, Ning Xuema's body in the coffin had undergone an amazing change. The flesh quickly dried up, and it looked like a skeleton wrapped in a layer of skin. The devil master was really dead, and he would never come back. Steward Himu's heart was bleeding, and his last hope was finally shattered. However, now was not the time to be sad. Steward Himu took a deep breath. Chapter 21:19. However, it was not the time to be sad. General Manager Heimu took a deep breath and bowed to Shen Nianma. Young master, it is time for you to make a decision. Shen Nianma closed his eyes slightly and slowly got up. He only said one word. Okay. He raised his hand and fished out the body from the blood coffin. The body had shrunk into a skeleton, and there were some bloodstains on it. It looked a little scary. If it were other children, they would have been scared and hid behind the adults. However, Shen Nianma was not afraid at all. Although he was short, his kung fu had reached a certain level. It was easy for him to carry a body like this. He stood up. The bloody skeleton in his arms almost covered his whole body. He strode out with the skeleton in his arms. Young master. General Manager Heimu did not know what he was going to do, so he quickly followed him out. On a big bed made of agarwood, Ning Xuema had been washed clean. She was lying on the bed wearing a new set of clothes. There were no other burial objects on the bed, only the withered lotus. The lotus was once his mother's most precious thing. His mother told him that the lotus could bring about miracles. He did not wait for a miracle. Instead, he waited for the death of both his parents. From now on, he would be a fugitive without his parents by his side. He put the lotus by his mother's side as an explanation for his mother's love for it. Mother, you can rest in peace. Nianma will avenge you in the future. Shen Nianma sat on the bed and leaned over to kiss his mother's cheek. General Manager Heimu and the other high-ranking generals of the Devil Kingdom watched from the side. They were all sad and angry. General Manager Heimu took a deep breath. Young Master, the Demon Lord's spirit in heaven will bless young Master's return. Shen Nianma did not speak. His mother's soul must have been gone. Otherwise, how could she be willing to leave him alone? Where did the spirit of the Devil Lord come from? He bowed a few times to the big bed. Then, he made up his mind to release the true Samadhi fire. A fireball was thrown over, and the agarwood bed burned. The three true flames burned things very quickly. After a while, the Devil Lord's corpse could no longer be seen on the big bed. Only a handful of ashes was left on the spot. Shen Nianma kept the ashes in a small porcelain jar and carried it on his back. Mother, I will take you with me. Ka. A bolt of lightning seemed to have exploded in midair. The unbreakable barrier that had protected the Emo Palace for half a month was finally broken. The battle cries instantly spread into Emo Palace. Countless figures of the Six Realms experts appeared in the sky above their heads. Flatten Emo Palace. Slay the demons and return peace to the Six Realms. Flatten Emo Palace. Flatten Emo Palace. The slogans were earth-shattering, causing the earth to tremble slightly. In the sky and on the ground, countless experts of the Four Realms appeared in Emo Palace. However, when he saw everything in Emo Palace clearly, he was somewhat stunned. These people thought that after Emo Palace was conquered, the devils would all flee outside. However, they had already set up an inescapable net in all directions, waiting for these devils to walk right into it. However, they did not expect that these devils had no intention of escaping at all. They gathered in the largest martial arts field in Emo Palace. Thousands of devil soldiers and generals were arranged in a strange pattern, as if they were forming a shocking array. Their clothes were also strange. Everyone was wearing a linen robe with their hair draped over their shoulders. There was a flame pattern embroidered on their chest. Chapter 2120. Their attire was also very strange. Every one of them was wearing a sackcloth robe, and their hair was loose. There was a flame pattern embroidered on their chests, and there was also a flame pattern on their foreheads. They stood there in an orderly manner, and their eyes were fixed on the invaders of the Four Realms. The 8 great guardians of the Devil clan stood in a row, dressed in the same attire as the Devil generals. In the middle of the array, there were 8 mythological beasts. A snow-white beast stood in the middle, and Shen Nianma sat on the back of the snow-white beast. He was surrounded by 7 mythological beasts, protecting him from all directions. Outside the Devil clan's formation, there was a strange pattern dripping with blood. It looked like a skull with its mouth open and laughing. The 2 eyes of the skull seemed to be alive as they moved on the ground, as if they were also staring at the invaders. It was a strange array, and the strange people in the Emo Palace. The Emo Palace was full of strangeness, and it made people feel cold when they saw it. The first invaders from the Four Realms were stunned when they saw the scene. Some of them were good at traveling underground, and wanted to get into the center of the Devil clan's array to kill the 8 mythological beasts. However, when they got close to the array, they could not wait to come back. It was as if they had been poured with strong acid. Their skin and flesh were burned, and they screamed in pain. Obviously, traveling underground was not a good idea. Since they could not attack, they could only attack openly. This time, there were tens of thousands of people from the Four Realms, but there were only a few thousand of them. Moreover, they had been hungry for a few days. The commander of the Four Realms ordered a group of people to attack. They were the vanguard to test the strength of the Devil Clan. Naturally, they also wanted to know what they were up to. The group of people could be said to be elites. They shouted and rushed forward. The group of people in the array of the Devil Clan finally moved. The great guardian of the Devil Clan laughed. "Ungrateful bastards. I will let you have a taste of the power of the Devil Clan." He suddenly waved his hand. The Devil Clan surrounding him did not face the enemy head-on. Instead, they crawled on the ground. The great guardian suddenly flicked his finger, and a red light flashed. In the blink of an eye, it circled around the devils who were crawling on the ground. The man prostrating on the ground suddenly let out an earth-shattering roar, causing the distant main hall to tremble and the tiles to clatter. Of course, the experts of the Four Realms were also shocked. Their ears buzzed, and they all took a step back. What kind of tactic was this? The high-ranking generals of the Four Realms were confused. Naturally, the experts of the Four Realms would not be scared off by this shout. After taking a step back, they simply took out all kinds of magic treasures and attacked the group of crawling devils blocking their way. All kinds of magic treasures flickered in midair, emitting ear-piercing and pleasing sounds. All kinds of lights flickered, and each of them carried a fierce murderous aura. Each of them was powerful enough to cut a person's body and split a person's soul. The prostrating demons remained motionless, but a circle of red light burst out from each of their bodies. The demons prostrating on the ground disappeared and were replaced by blood-red falcons. Every single one of them was gigantic, and they carried an eerie ghostly aura. They circled in the air and flapped their wings, sending raging flames and gusts of wind toward the experts of the Four Realms. They were completely defeated by the attack. Blood Nether Falcons. They are Blood Nether Falcons. Someone exclaimed, "Oh my god, they are using the Blood Soul Forbidden technique." Chapter 21-21. The Blood Soul Forbidden technique was said to be the most advanced and most brutal technique in the demon realm. It was a technique that used the lives of demons as the price to transform their souls into the most ferocious Blood Nether Eagles. The Blood Nether Eagles were not afraid of weapons, fire, or water. It could be said that they had copper skin and iron bones. One could not even find a place to attack to kill them. One could only use the water of the heavenly river to water them. However, only the heavenly emperor could use the water of the heavenly river. No one else could even think about it. Furthermore, their attack power was extremely terrifying. It was 10 times more powerful than the Blood Nether Eagles that the experts in the Purple Demon Formation encountered. However, once those demon generals turned their souls into Blood Nether Eagles, they could no longer be resurrected. They would burn out their souls and die within 3 days. Their souls would truly dissipate. Unexpectedly, these demons did not want to escape. Instead, they chose to perish together. Dozens of Blood Nether Eagles flew up and down. They spat out samadhi fire from their mouths and flapped their wings. In the blink of an eye, they killed the first group of people from the Four Realms. The people from the Four Realms were forced to retreat. They did not know how to deal with them. "I'll let you bastards have a taste of our power. You want to bully the demon realm? Dream on. I'm going to perish together with you. Don't even think about escaping." Another 3 groups of demon protectors laughed wildly as they activated the Blood Soul Forbidden technique. They had been besieged for such a long time that they were simply too sullen. Everyone had a belly full of anger in their hearts. They would rather die than drag a few people down with them. There were 4 groups of people in total. The souls of every 2 people combined and turned into Blood Nether Eagles. There were a total of 400 Blood Nether Eagles that attacked the people from the Four Realms. There were about 10,000 people from the Four Realms who entered the Mo Palace. However, they were all scared witless by the 400 Blood Nether Eagles. Countless screams came from all directions. Some people were burned into charcoal. Some people had their bodies torn apart. There were broken limbs and body parts everywhere on the ground. Blood flowed along the ground of the training ground. The generals of the Four Realms hurriedly organized their forces to resist the Blood Nether Eagles. At the same time, they wanted to send people out to call for reinforcements. However, they could not get out at the moment. The blood nether eagles covered the entire sky. These blood nether eagles were also well trained. They could turn into such ferocious beasts in an orderly manner. Some were waiting in the sky, some were diving down, and some were guarding the entrances and exits. They worked together and guarded the training field like an iron bucket. As for the soldiers of the four realms, they were like turtles in a jar. In just 2 short hours, more than half of the soldiers who came in had been killed or injured. Some of them reacted quickly and immediately used the underground movement technique to escape. Only then did they manage to save their lives. The leaders of the four realms would never do something like taking the lead. They stayed in their own tents and waited for the news of victory. 2 hours later, there was no news of victory. Instead, a general covered in blood rushed in dejectedly and reported to the emperors of the four realms a piece of bad news. The Devil clan had activated the Blood Soul Forbidden technique in Mo Palace and started a massacre in all directions. Of the 10,000 people who had entered, less than 3,000 were left now, and the number was still decreasing rapidly. The Heavenly Emperor turned pale with fright. The other sovereigns of the 3 realms were still confused because they were inexperienced. At this time, the Sky Emperor did not have time to explain to them. He immediately led everyone out of the central tent and rushed towards Mo Palace. This central tent was the core of the army and was naturally far away from the battlefield. Therefore, it would take some time for the Celestial Emperor and the others to fly over. Chapter 21-22. What he didn't expect was that as soon as they flew into the sky, they saw a red cloud rising from Mo Palace. Those blood nether eagles rushed out of Mo Palace. Not good. They must be escorting the 8 divine beasts and the son of the demon to escape. With hundreds of blood nether eagles charging at the front, which ambush troop would be their match. The inescapable net that the 4 realm leaders had painstakingly set up would be torn open. If the 8 divine beasts escaped now, there would be no end to the trouble. The celestial Thearch's prediction was right. As soon as the blood-red cloud rushed out of Mo Palace, it immediately chose a direction and left. Its speed was like a bolt of lightning, cutting through the blue sky. The celestial Thearch panicked and immediately ordered the troops lying in ambush in that direction to quickly appear and intercept it at all costs. He himself also rushed in that direction like a gust of wind. What he didn't expect was that just as he ran 100 meters with countless celestial world guards, General Manager Himu led a group of demon soldiers and generals to stop him. The celestial Thearch looked at the demon soldiers, who instantly formed a human wall in front of him and blocked his path. He felt like he was struck by lightning. Weren't demons usually the most selfish and heartless ones? Wasn't it normal for them to scatter when disaster struck? Why did everything change now? Everything changed. When the celestial Thearch led his troops to attack the demon world, he only needed to kill the leader first and capture or execute the leader. Those demon soldiers and generals would collapse on their own and scatter in all directions, unable to cause any trouble. He thought that it would be the same this time. Once Mo Palace was broken, these demons would take the opportunity to scatter and flee. He only needed to concentrate his troops to deal with the 8 divine beasts. Unexpectedly, not only did these demons not run, but they also came to meet him. They were facing the celestial world, which had the strongest combat power and troops. One had to know that all the people by the celestial Thearch's side were top-notch experts, and they had the largest number of people. Each of these experts could fight against 10 experts from Mo Palace. General Manager Himu had brought 2,000 demons. Other than those who had transformed into blood nether eagles, almost all the demon soldiers and generals were here. Were they going to fight to the death? Just to protect that little guy? Have all the devils changed? That devil lord had only ruled the Mo Palace for 3 years, yet he had already subdued the hearts of the people to such an extent? How did she do it? The celestial Thearch had a belly full of questions. His gaze fell on General Manager Himu, and he said in a low voice, "Are you here to die? Was it worth it? If you know what's good for you, get out of my way and I'll let you live. Otherwise, I won't spare your lives." The celestial emperor was in a hurry to catch up with the 8 mythological beasts, so he didn't want to waste his energy here. Therefore, he deliberately said this to give these demons a chance to escape, so that they would give up without attacking. Head Steward Hamu's eyes were bloodshot, but he was still smiling calmly. Not even a chicken or dog will be spared. Celestial Emperor, do you think you can wipe out the devil race? He really dared to brag as long as he had a mouth and acted as a wall if he had a face. Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? Celestial Emperor, you are the #1 person in the celestial world. But I didn't expect you to be so despicable. A general beside the celestial Dharch scolded. How dare you? He actually dared to insult the heavenly emperor like this. We the celestial world are righteous. How can we be despicable? Despicable and shameless is a word only used to describe you demons, okay? Chapter 21-23. Head Steward Hamu raised his head and laughed. Righteous? The celestial realm is hunting down a child who's not even half a year old. You call that righteous? You're tarnishing the name of righteousness. Nonsense. He's not an ordinary child. He's the son of the devil. He ordered the 8 demonic beasts to break into the prison and kill so many innocent celestial generals. The general from the celestial realm retorted. He gave the order? What proof do you have that our young master gave the order? The celestial emperor's face darkened. He didn't want to argue with people because of his status. What's more, he had to chase the 8 divine beasts first. As for these small fries, he could deal with them later. The celestial realm soldiers wanted to retort, but the celestial emperor waved his hand to stop them. They're just arguing. Ignore them. Everyone has the right to kill the demons of the devil realm. There's no need to argue with them. He raised his hand, and a golden light suddenly flew out of his palm. With a thunderous sound, it struck Head Steward Hamu. Since the celestial emperor was the leader of all immortals, he naturally had some skills. His martial arts were definitely top-notch, and could be considered terrifying. However, he usually held a high position. If there was anything he needed to do, his subordinates would do it for him. He didn't need to do anything at all. Thus, after so many years, the people of the 6 realms had almost forgotten his true abilities. They'd forgotten that he used to be the most invincible person in the 6 realms. Head Steward Hamu was the first to bear the brunt of his thunderous attack. He was caught off guard, and by the time he realized something was wrong, it was already too late to block it. He only had time to dodge the attack on his vitals. He couldn't dodge the entire attack. His entire body was sent flying by the golden light. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air, and crashed into the crowd of demonic soldiers and generals. If it weren't for the 3 enforcers desperately holding on to him, he would have fallen off the cloud and shattered into pieces. Their leader was beaten up, so the demonic realm's people were naturally enraged. Bastard! You're attacking because you can't win an argument. So the celestial realm's supremes are nothing more than this. Fight! Let's fight this bastard. The demonic realm's people all attacked the celestial emperor. Naturally, the celestial emperor's people also began to fight back. For a time, both sides were in a chaotic battle. Magic treasures and devilish lights flew about. Severed limbs and mutilated bodies were the same color, and wails and curses filled the entire heavens and the earth. This battle was exceptionally tragic. In just an hour, countless people from both sides had been injured and lost their lives. Although there weren't as many people around the Sky Emperor as there were in the Devil Realm, they were all elites among elites. Usually, when they fought, they could fight against 10 or even 100 people. In addition, the allied army of the 4 realms had a lot of people, but they were all dispatched by the Heaven Emperor to set up inescapable encirclement in all directions. Now that the devil soldiers and devil generals were all gathered here, they naturally received the order to rush over. Amidst the chaos, more and more people from the 4 realms appeared, while the number of people from the devil realm decreased. Of course, the celestial Dharch disdained to participate in such a chaotic battle. He quickly used a spell to extricate himself from the battle, and led a dozen or so capable subordinates to chase after the 8 mythological beasts. The 8 mythological beasts surrounded Shenyanma, but it was not easy for them to escape. Although the Shuang was in front of them, the enemy had sent too many people, and their strength was too strong. It could be said that within 100 miles of Mo Palace, there were arrays and ambushes set up by the allied army of the Four Realms. Moreover, a slight move in one part could affect the whole situation. Chapter 21-24. It could be said that within 100 miles of the Mo Palace, there were arrays and ambushes set up by the allied forces of the Four Realms. Moreover, the generals of the Four Realms had already received orders from their superiors to stop the 8 mythological beasts at all costs. Therefore, the 8 mythological beasts also encountered great obstacles on their way. The blood nether eagles at the front were almost always fighting. They formed a sharp cone shape to protect the 8 mythological beasts in the middle, and then rushed forward. Countless people were killed and injured by their claws. Along the way, there was a rain of blood, and the clouds along the way were blood-red. Shen Nianma had been on Bai Zai's back with his little mouth tightly closed. Occasionally, he would help to deal with the attacks in front of him. Because there were many enemies along the way, and the attacks came from all directions, the blood nether eagles occasionally could not protect them. Naturally, the 8 mythological beasts would also help. They had used their divine power to set up a wizardry barrier to resist the powerful attacks of the Four Realms for half a month. In fact, the power of the 8 mythological beasts was almost exhausted, so their attacks were not very powerful. However, they were still trying their best to protect their young master. In fact, Bai Zai was still a little worried. It was afraid that little Nianma would not be able to accept the sacrifice of his own people and desperately want to go back to fight. By then, all the efforts of the Mo Palace would be in vain. The only child of the Divine Lord and the Great Devil would not be able to protect him. However, it did not expect little Nianma to sit steadily on its back. When he saw the subordinates of the Mo Palace who used to play with him sacrifice their lives to turn into the blood nether eagles, his little body trembled. Although he was very stiff, he was still very calm. He didn't do anything rash in the heat of the moment. This made Bai Zai feel relieved. The young master was indeed the son of the Divine Lord and the Great Devil. He was even calmer than an adult when he encountered a situation. Shen Nianma did not speak along the way. If Bai Zai could not sense that he was on its back, it would have thought that he had turned into a little stone statue. Bai Zai was still a little worried about his mood. It was afraid that he would fall sick when he suddenly encountered such a big change at such a young age. During the fight, it would also comfort him. It said that the young master could cry if he was sad. Even if the young master cried, no one would laugh at him. Bai Zai had said something like this 3 or 4 times. Bai Zai, you don't have to say anything. I will not cry. Don't worry about me, I'm fine. Little Nianma finally spoke when Bai Zai was nagging for the 4th time. Although his voice was dry, it was very firm. His mother had said that crying was a sign of weakness, so he would never cry again. He no longer had any relatives in this world. What he needed the most was to be strong, make himself stronger, become even stronger. Only in this way could he be worthy of his mother, worthy of his father, and worthy of the title of the son of God and devil. Sooner or later, he would return as the king and reshuffle the 6 realms. Take revenge for everyone in the Mo Palace, and trample on all the injustice in this world. Right now, all he had to do was survive. He clenched his teeth tightly, and pursed his lips into a straight line. Occasionally, blood would splatter on his body, but he didn't seem to feel it. The troop formed by the blood nether eagles was like a sharp arrow, sweeping through everything in its path. No team could hurt them, and no team was unafraid of their 3 true flames. Therefore, even though smoke was billowing all the way, this special team still continued to advance. Chapter 21-25. Bai Zai used its claws to wipe off the blood on its eyelashes. It looked ahead and heaved a sigh of relief. Young master, we have broken through 5 lines of defense. There is only 1 left. As long as we break through this last line, we will be safe. We will bring you to the safest place to recuperate. Shen Nianma nodded, and did not say anything else. Was there any place in this world that could be considered safe? Only by becoming an absolute powerhouse like his father and mother could he be considered safe. Only then could he have the final say in this world. Shouts and screams were heard from all directions. The soldiers in front of the sixth line of defense finally appeared and blocked their way. Both sides were too lazy to talk nonsense. Once they met, a white-hot fight broke out. The soldiers in the sixth line of defense did not manage to stop the bloody nether eagles. They were all killed by them. The bloody nether eagles flew up and down like burning wheels. While they were fighting with the soldiers who blocked their way, the sky suddenly began to rain heavily. It was like the Milky Way pouring down. The bloody nether eagles who were fighting were caught off guard and were drenched by the heavy rain. They screamed in pain. Their bodies began to melt, as if they were poured with concentrated sulfuric acid. It was like a falling rain. The hearts of the 8 mythological beasts suddenly sank. The Milky Way water. The real Milky Way water. More than half of the bloody nether eagles were drenched by the Milky Way water. The 8 mythological beasts suddenly raised their heads and looked at the celestial emperor, who was floating in front of them. Their eyes gradually turned red. There is no need to run anymore. The general next to the celestial emperor shouted angrily, "Don't talk nonsense. Capture them first." The celestial emperor gave the order. At this time, the 8 mythological beasts naturally did not want to talk nonsense with them. The more they talked, the more reinforcements would come. Although the 8 mythological beasts had never fought with the celestial emperor, they could judge how strong his kung fu was based on his aura. He was a strong opponent who was difficult to deal with. This was a battle of life and death. If they won this battle, they would be able to live. If they lost, there was only one word: death. The celestial emperor naturally understood that this was a very important battle, and he needed to do it himself. He slowly took off his outer robe, and a resplendent glazed sword slowly appeared in his palm. As soon as this sword appeared, it shone brightly, almost illuminating half the sky. His gaze fell on Baizé. He knew that it was the leader of the 8 beasts. You only have 2 options. Either surrender or die. If possible, he still wanted to subdue the 8 divine beasts. If he could use them in the future, he would be even more supreme in the 6 realms, second only to the supreme god. This was a huge temptation, so the celestial emperor didn't want to take the lives of the 8 mythological beasts, unless it was absolutely necessary. As for the child that the 8 mythological beasts were protecting like an eyeball, he had to die. Cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots was not an empty phrase. It was something that every person in power would consider. Baizé laughed. His laughter was like thunder as it rumbled through the air. We'll take the third path and kill you as a scapegoat. 2/3 of the blood nether eagles were killed by the heavenly river water, summoned by the celestial arch. There were only a few dozen left. The tongue snake saw that the situation was not good, so it rose into the air and transformed into a gigantic umbrella in the air. It protected the remaining blood nether eagles and blocked the heavenly river water. The celestial emperor frowned slightly. It seemed that the supreme god and the demon master had tamed the 8 mythological beasts to be extraordinarily loyal. If that was the case, then he could only kill them. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.